Looks like everything is coming through. Start some music in the background, help cover up the sound of the air conditioning. Okay, cool. Hopefully you guys can't hear the air conditioning too much. It doesn't kick off too much, but I can always hear it in the recording and it bothers me, and so I try to mask it with a little bit of music. All right. So, welcome this evening to episode 85 of the Pathfinders podcast. Right off the bat, we will address the elephant in the room.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yup.
Hey, BuzzRad, thanks for the sub. Thanks for coming and hanging out this evening. Good to see you, buddy. So, you'll notice that I am not using the traditional Pathfinders stream theme. I'm using the one that I use when I stream by myself, and that is because you are the elephant. Yeah, you are the elephant in the room. If you see me looking over here to the right, it's because on the right-hand side of my screen is where the stream is, so I can watch it versus the straight in ahead of me. So the elephant in the room is that Nazareth is not here. And the reason Nazareth is not here is Nazareth is moving on to bigger and better things. Nazareth has been planning on moving out and moving to upstate New York for quite some time now, getting out on his own and making some big changes in his life. And I fully support him in his endeavors, and I'm super proud of him for making this decision and going through with this. But that has left him super busy getting ready for this big change in his life. And it's come to the point where the podcast is not something that he has time for anymore. And he and I still talk. Obviously, I don't get to talk to him as much as I'd like because he's busy, I'm busy. But I've decided to just, go ahead and do this episode by myself because we haven't been able to make our schedules work. And I don't know if we're going to be able to make our schedules work regularly at all in the future. So for now, I'm going to be doing the podcast by myself. I'm going to be bringing it up to the community in my Discord, on YouTube, on Twitter, and such. Whether you guys think I should invite a new co-host, maybe invite random co-hosts to come join me and talk about things that they want to talk about, if I should do the show myself. But we'll figure it out as we go, no rush. But I just want to take the time now to say thank you, Naz, for doing this show with me. It was his idea in the first place. I really appreciate him, getting me out of my comfort zone to do the show and learn about how to do this stuff and how to stream, even though I'm still very amateur about it. And thank you, Naz, for being my friend. I hope that we'll be able to, I'm going to do all the bits on this. Yeah. But yeah, I really appreciate what we've done. I really appreciate Naz's friendship and the conversations that we've had. It's meant a lot to me. I hope that we will be able to, continue to chat, informally, and maybe he'll be able to find time in the future. Rotate hosts. I don't know. It's something that I'll have to figure out as I go. But in the meantime, I wanted to keep going over the development news for Star Citizen, and I wanted to keep talking about the things that I thought that were valuable to the community and things that I want to talk about, which is why I'm doing the show tonight. Leaving on vacation on Tuesday, so I'll be gone for about a week and a half. But then when I get back, I'll be doing it as a fairly regular thing because it'll just be my schedule. But I've got I'll talk some more towards the end of the show about some of the ideas I have for some upcoming episodes. I would love to bring in some guest hosts. I'd love to have maybe like do call-ins from the community where you guys could call in and join me in the Discord chat and pose a question, and then we could talk about that live, or do research on things live. We'll see how it plays out. I just have to take care of a few real life work things that have been sucking up a lot of my time, but after that, it's daily life for me. I've had a lot of real life things sucking up a lot of my time that has really negatively impacted me doing the show for better part of 6 months now, if not longer. And those are finally almost done. I'm down to the last one. And so, starting the next couple of weeks, I'll have a lot more freedom to, not have to spend so much of my, not working, not taking care of the kids' time, doing work from home stuff. So yeah. Is the volume on the music okay?
Say we all.
Hey, thanks. Hey, Shimpasta07, good to see you. Thanks for coming and hanging out. Is the volume on the music okay? Can you guys hear it? Is it distracting at all? I just want to make sure it's not like, overshadowing my voice or anything like that. But, at the same time, I wanted to have a little bit of, low volume background music like a lot of other streamers do, just so it isn't, void 69 by 69, just so it isn't an audio void when I pause for a second, like if I'm reading something. And I can always adjust that, on the fly, right in front of me. So this evening, you can't hear it. All right, I'm going to turn up the music a little bit. What about now? A little bit higher. Oh, do I have... What's the volume on the player? Oh, that's why. Here, let's put it there. All right, how is it for you guys now? Can you still hear it? Is it okay? A little lower? Oh, next track is about to start. We'll wait for the next track to start. There we go. I'll leave it at 20% for you guys. Okay. All right. So this evening, we've got an interesting show. I'm finally covering the May monthly report, just because I had hoped to do one more show with Nazareth, but we couldn't make our schedules work together this month. Fine for me now. Perfect. All right. We're going to stick with it. I wish I could turn it down just a little bit more for me, because tell you what, I don't need to hear it. I'll just mute it for me. But I kind of like this song. Okay, whatever. But yeah, so we're going to cover the May monthly report. I hadn't intended to cover the Roadmap Roundups, but I'm like, you know what? I probably should. We'll just breeze through them really quick. The 4th and the 18th, just so we're all caught up. And then have a Spectrum Pulse. Haven't done a Spectrum Pulse in a while, but I figured it was... there's been a lot of conversation recently with the release of the Asgard. And then now we have the Asperia utility, which are both variants of a dropship. And the Asgard is still classified as a dropship. They just call it a vehicle dropship, but it is still definitely a dropship. And the Asperia, the Prowler utility definitely meets the definition of a dropship. And so there's been a lot of chat in the community regarding that, and that's what the Spectrum Pulse is about, is, keeping finger on the pulse of the community, which is, in lore, Spectrum is sort of like the internet in the Star Citizen universe, but also we have Spectrum for us in the Star Citizen community, our official forums. But keeping a finger on the pulse of what people are talking about, and that from listening to those conversations, I realized that, oh my goodness, there is so much. There's such a significant misunderstanding of what CIG's goal is for dropships and what they intend for them. And it's simply another example of, not to the extent of the Reclaimer, but because dropships do function in the game, they kind of do their function. They just aren't necessary to do their function because of the limitations of the game. But it's kind of like how the Reclaimer came in before salvage was even in. Well, the dropships are in game and they work and they fly, and you can use them, but the aspects of the game that necessitate their use and make them valuable and give a reason for the quote unquote dropship tax, those are not in game. But it's interesting because a lot of those things are very far into development, if not already in or nearly in. It's just because the Valkyrie released in 2018. I think the Prowler was 2020. It's been years, and so they thought that the things that were going to make those ships necessary were going to be in a lot sooner than they in. Well, we saw how that worked out. So we're going to talk about those things. I've compiled a list. I've got citations. We're going to watch some video clips, look at some pictures, some Spectrum posts. But I wanted to give you guys the first look because I'm going to compile all this, with a bunch of B-roll and music into probably a 15-minute video, 15-minute video. And that's going to be my next short form, Star Citizen video. But you guys will get all the information first. And I'm hoping that when you guys have these conversations in the community in the future, you'll be able to but wait, there's more. Watch this or read these, look at these things that Tree found, and now I want people to be like, oh, that makes sense. I didn't know that. North End Trooper says, I'm going to ask my question here since I missed it on the captain's table. At the Stormbreaker event, there is interactive medical devices. Don't do anything. Do you see us getting the next medical tier by CitizenCon? I'm not going to say by CitizenCon. I would say before the end of the year, probably with with IAE or whenever, because that's the thing is with ships releasing, with us getting a patch every month and a ship every month, we don't know when the Apollo's coming, and we don't know what they're working on for it. So there's at no point in Star Citizen's development has so much been going on that we aren't getting a look at, just because the monthly reports don't cover everything. They cover a lot of stuff, but not everything. And so we don't know where they are with those things. And so it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. I'm hyped. I mean, obviously I've been waiting for my Apollo forever. But I also don't want the Apollo to come in without more medical gameplay. So we'll see what comes and whether it's good or not. Shimpasa says people want to use the Prowler utility as a everyday cargo ship, even though it's a drop ship. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you can, and that's the problem is people are like, well, it's not great value as a cargo ship. It's like, well, because it's not a cargo ship. It's, hey, buddy, what do you got there? Look, Daddy's doing my show. You want to say hi? Here, take that out of your mouth. Here, you can hop up. You can be on the camera, and you can speak into the microphone and say hi.
And
yeah, see, there's Booney. You're on TV.
And that's a fire.
Yeah, that's a fire.
And
Boone, can you wave? Wave to the camera. Go wave. Daddy's friends are waving at you.
no.
Say hi.
Where's your friends stay?
They're on the internet.
Where are my
They are real, I promise.
why are your friends on the fire day?
I'm talking to them via the internet, through the internet. Yeah. And I'm recording my show, and they're watching, and they're talking with me.
Yeah, but why are your friends day?
They're all over the world.
Yeah. But why are your friends all over the world?
Well, that friend is in Australia, and that one is here in Boise. And I don't know where Shimpasta lives, but he is a real person. They are a real person. Shimpasta lives in a pasta box.
Nope.
All right, buddy. No, don't push the button, please. Dad's gonna keep doing my show, okay?
No.
I will see you in the morning. Here, turn around, give me a hug and a kiss.
No.
Big hug. Big hug. Kiss. Mwah. Kiss on forehead. Mwah. Daddy loves you. Sweet dreams. I'll see you tomorrow morning, okay? Stand up. Alrighty. Oh. Close the door, please. Thank you. All right, buddy.
Night, Daddy.
Night, night, Booney. I love you. Sweet dreams. Close the door. All the way. Pull it closed. There we go. So, tell you what, Blizzard, hold that question, because we'll talk about that when we get to the Spectrum Pulse. We're going to do that at the end, so you guys got to stick around for the really good stuff. But let's go ahead and we will switch screens. Not as saucy as other postures. We'll switch screens and we'll get into the monthly reports, and then we'll do the Roadmap Roundups, and then we'll get into the Spectrum Pulse. All right, 1 second. Alrighty, so the monthly report for May 2025. I will say that for the ASD locations, I am glad that they are reusing this location. But I wish that it wasn't as so much a carbon copy, but I wish that they had reused the assets to make something new and different. It's like, it's kind of a cheese. It's kind of a low, in my opinion, kind of low effort, that all they did was change some of the set dressing to update it, because otherwise the layout is, as far as I can tell, there. So we'll see what else they can do with it in the future. I'm hoping for a bit more uniqueness in the layout and structure of the locations. So May 2025. Alpha 4.2 Stormbreaker is live in the public test universe. There's still a lot to do behind the scenes as the new content gets pushed to the breaking point in preparation for live release. Alongside patch fixes and other various changes, many teams touched on tech, locations, and updates coming later this year. Read on for all the latest info. So, first and foremost, and so with the show just being me, I'm going to be looking over at chat and watching it as much as possible. So if you got questions, I want to hear them, because I don't have Naz to interact with. We're going to be spending a lot more time interacting with you guys, and taking your questions and going over things as in real time. So AI content. AI content continued to support Star Citizen's monthly release cadence. It was exciting to see the comms calls start to make their way into the game, as well as finally unveiling the newsflash content around the landing zones. These little updates will help provide players updates about the events happening around the verse. AI content team. And I will say that it is a really great quality of life improvement. The comms calls for your missions, the newsflash updates at the landing zones. I hope that they will expand those, I've only noticed them at the landing zones. I think they're in the stations too. Now that I think about it, I don't remember. If it helps, I'm wearing a silly hat. But I think it's great, especially with that stuff. If they can make sure it's changing and updating with every patch, it helps to make the verse feel alive. It helps it feel like it's changing, on a regular basis. A living, breathing universe like Chris Roberts always wanted. And I really appreciate the missions being that instead of just text. It definitely adds a whole lot to the game, and I feel like it's much more the industry standard at this point. A lot of places still just use text-based missions, but when they have the tools, the technology, and the resources, being able to do voice and facial capture, I think is a really great addition. As they continue to develop these features, the devs requested additional functionality to allow for new features, such as scheduling, as well as scope out work to make things like channels. It makes me wonder when they say channels, are they talking about different news channels? Because we do know that there's, in the lore, a bunch of sort of regular broadcast shows that they've given to us as if they're transcribed. And so I'm hoping that we will see those not just published as a lore dump on the webpage, but as things that you can, you can pull up and listen to while you're on Quantum. Listen to and watch on Quantum. You can put it on your one of your HUD panels or your heads-up display, or one of your screens on your dashboard in order to get the latest news, or to hear the different almost like talk shows. If you ever read those, I think it'd be really cool to have those in game, to be able to use those to stay up to date with what's going on. AI content also continued to support the missions team as they integrated new comms content alongside new lines for Wicklow. On larger scale initiatives, the team worked alongside combat AI to devise a new collection of wildline triggers for combatants, and how they could, or whether they should, plug into the proposed line set for generic population NPCs. That would be really great if they can expand on the wildline triggers for when we're doing missions. Hopefully not just combatants in the future, but when we start getting expansion to the repairman missions, if you're going down into the mines of a below a distribution center, and there's other workers, to be able to hear more wild lines, especially if they're reacting to things that you're doing. That will obviously have a lot of value to it, in my opinion. The team also reviewed and standardized the trigger list used by behaviors across the game to ensure that there's a single list of context words that everyone is operating with. This will prevent confusion when building behaviors or structuring missions. AI features. In May, AI features ensured human combat is in an optimal state in several key areas: ammo management and behavior, cover usage, first reactions and perception, attack and defend areas, investigations, grenade use, tactics, and medical behavior. That's interesting, because that's been hit or miss on whether that's working for the NPCs. I really hope that they can expand that to include friendly NPCs being able to revive you in the near future, because that's a big feature that we really need in game. Both whether it's just allies coming along with a med pen, but also NPC trauma team, like in the video I made. We really need that in game. The main focus is to stabilize and reach gold standard for each. So a lot of these things have been introduced and have since deprecated or are not functioning reliably. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, sometimes they bug out, sometimes they only work partly. So there's a big performance and stability focus to make sure that these things are all working, because you do notice it a lot. I know I notice it when I'm doing FPS missions, when these things break and it's like, oh well, I can tell that this isn't functioning as intended. In pursuit of the above, various issues were fixed, including NPCs looting ammo too close to hostiles. Yeah, maybe don't go loot the body or loot the ammo box that is right in front of the people that are shooting you. NPCs handling light switch disruption. Light switch disruption. I wonder if that changes to lights coming on and off. Or you're reacting to like flashlights. and first reactions triggering simultaneously and putting the AI into an unresponsive state. A bug was also fixed that caused NPCs to incorrectly count ammo and evaluate remaining resources, causing them to loot more than necessary. Can you really loot more than necessary? I don't think that's possible. I don't loot more than necessary. It's not a habitual thing that I really need to get a hold of. Various improvements were made too, including how NPCs select and use cover for shooting. They also made it easier to add new information to the AI weapon component debug and improved the investigate flow to work better over a range of conditions with multiple NPCs at different awareness levels. EFT has taught me to clear the next room before looting the previous room. Yeah. Yes, that is definitely a good idea. Even though your first gut reaction is like, no, I have to pick up the things and put them in my backpack, you should probably make sure that no one's going to come through that door and double tap you before you start looting everything. It might be a safety thing to stop annoying crewmates from constantly flicking the light switches. Let's see, where was I? The devs also customized the friendly fire check so that it can be balanced to give NPCs the desired behavior and prevent them from shooting when players feel they shouldn't. Oh, I wonder if... I hadn't noticed, but I wonder if there's been friendly fire incidents, during missions. I haven't seen any NPCs shooting each other when they shouldn't. The wildline setup channel was updated to enable the devs to mute and suppress already queued lines after the death of an NPC. Yeah, they probably shouldn't be going through their wild lines after they die. That's awkward. Shut up, you're supposed to be dead. Defend area and combat movement queries were also updated to ensure NPCs don't get stuck in spawn closets. This was one I've been dealing with a lot, but I've only been having it with bunker missions in the old bunkers, where the bad guy NPCs won't spawn for the mission, and so I can't do the mission because the good guy NPCs who are defending the location get stuck in the spawn closets and elevators and stuff. So they're stuck just sitting there, which means that they don't move out and the bad guys don't spawn, and then you can't shoot them. So, it's like, okay, well, mission failed. It is also happening at Stormbreaker. So it's something that's been persisting across patches. Definitely something they need to get a hold of. Because the spawn closets, are a feature, those are game-breaking bugs. If you can't do the content because the NPCs aren't spawning in the spawn closets and they're not allowing the mission to progress, or the mission, just is too easy because no bad guys show up, that's game-breaking. But those spawn closets are also necessary for NPC populations to regulate. That's where NPCs disappear to when they're done doing their working shift. So it's not just for combat purposes. Everything that everything that NPCs are supposed to be doing as part of their schedules is regulated, is impacted by spawn closets not working. You can't have NPC trauma team coming to rescue you and taking you back to the nearest clinic if they can't spawn out of a spawn closet and drag you back to said spawn closet and, fade to black, wake up in space station clinic. So hopefully that's something that they can get a handle of. For example, if too many NPCs are set to enter a 3 meter by 6 meter area, they will get stuck. Oh man. New tech and features were implemented too, including logic to prevent low to medium priority wildlines from triggering during track view sequences that NPCs are involved in. Logic was also added for switching the aim target location to the visible element of the body while considering aiming priority, torso then head. Okay. To me, that reads that NPCs will... target your torso versus your head, and hopefully that will mean less headshots. Yeah, because sometimes when the servers are on fire, you barely peek your head around a corner and it's just bam, headshot right between the eyes. AI features also finished work to ensure NPCs animatedly react to compromised cover. Cleaned up the NPC medic flow to make it more robust and improve the visuals. Please, please, please. Please let that be more than just them medicing themselves. Please let that expand to medicing us. An NPC trauma team is spawning and rescuing you. Please let CIG have watched my video. Add additional debugging to balance first reaction times for audio and visual events, and added trait debugging to prevent conflicting behavior traits. A fix was added for placed dead bodies to prevent them from causing the AI to react when, from a story perspective, they already exist in the world. Yeah, if they were already there, the AI shouldn't be panicking and running about, oh, there's a dead body, if they already knew about it. It shouldn't be a surprise to them. Finally, for AI features, the team added audio proc clips. I wonder if that meant to be like audio procedure clips to takedown animations so that nearby AI are alerted. Aha. Okay, so they'd have to be nearby. Yeah, obviously it's not going to be, like if they're, 2 rooms over, they won't be alerted. But if they're around a corner, they should still be able to hear takedown animations. So making, stealth a little bit more believable, realistic. They also added debug logging to disturbance events to prevent AI from reacting before the level has started properly. Okay. Yeah, you don't want them rushing into position before you even get there, and just waiting in ambush when they shouldn't even know that you're coming. AI Game Intelligence Development Team. In May, the Game Intelligence Development Team began to work on the UI prototype for Mission System V2. The UI prototype. Okay, so if they're working on the UI prototype, they're also working on Mission System V2, and I wonder if are they already working within Mission System V2 and they're just updating the UI, or are they getting ready to progress to Mission System V2 and they're working on the UI prototype for that? North End Trooper, don't let me forget to tell you about this cocktail in a can that I found. It's a Huckleberry Mule. It's good. It's real good. And I'm at that age where all like cocktails are too sweet, and so I have to cut them with soda water. But they're phenomenal. I mean, I love all things Huckleberry. If you haven't gotten the Huckleberry bread from Costco, it's like a regular loaf of bread, but with huckleberries in it, and then like a light sort of Dutch crust on the top. I use that to make French toast for the kids. Holy hell. So good. So good. Yeah, we're going up to McCall on Wednesday. And so I'm hoping that we can pick some wild huckleberries while we're up there, or at least I can get some more huckleberry stuff. But yeah, that's what I'm drinking right now, and it's good. Space theme. I don't know. It's purple. Purple alien. It's space grapes. I don't know. Specifically the outline header design, including the mission object properties design, the outline infrastructure, and a generic outline panel. This also involved creating UI visuals for the outline with all its components. Alongside this, the team also fixed bugs and worked on features requested by the game designers to improve StarScript. AI Tech. Last month, AI Tech continued to improve how navigation links to connect external zones. I'm pretty sure that's talking about going from Huckleberry bread from Costco. I'll have to find this now. Mission accepted. Oh, dude, you will thank me. I can't wait to hear your reaction. It's so good. Or making a peanut butter and jelly with that bread. Yeah. Yeah, definitely worth the trip to Costco. So last month, AI tech continued to improve how navigation links to connect external zones. So I believe when they're talking about navigation links to connect external zones, they're talking about using it's a navigation link if an NPC needs to go from one part of a landing zone to another via the tram, or if they need to go from one part of a space station to another via an elevator, or any location that uses an elevator or something like that. Because eventually that's part of what NPCs will be doing. They won't just be confined to the zone that they're in. And so they have to be able to transition. Essentially, they use the same pathing system that our star map uses in order to tell them where to go. But it has to be able to give them an instruction to, okay, wait here for elevator door to open, then go into elevator, and then, it will generate the movement for them to go to the location they need to go to, or tell them to get onto the tram, wait for the tram to sit at a seat, because it's part of the navigation link, and then when you arrive at the location, you get up from the seat and you exit the tram. So it's a pretty complex behavior, but part of that is the navigation link system. Yeah, until they fall into the elevator of doom. Citizen Dex, good to see you. Thanks for coming and hanging out. Dex, are you one of our Idaho friends? Sorry, I'm terrible with remembering where people are. But yeah, it's in Boise. It's at all. I've found the Huckleberry bread at the Boise Costco and the Meridian one. I never go out to the Nampa one, but it's there, and it's man, I love it. I'm getting another loaf because I made a whole batch and I put the rest in the freezer to have easy breakfast for the kids. But I'm grabbing 2 loaves at Costco tomorrow to take with us camping, so I can make it a ton of it on the griddle while we're camping for my kids and all their cousins who are going to be there. So it'll be good fun. Let's see. Oh, you out of New Orleans, same time zone as Astropub, which is why I'm usually watching his stuff. Aha. Okay, cool. Well, if you are ever in Idaho, I don't know if they send it to other Costco's. I just know it's it's definitely here in Idaho, because everybody loves Huckleberry up here because the huckleberries grow wild up here. But yeah, it's phenomenal. But yeah, thanks for dropping in and hanging out, Citizen Dex. Good to see you. If you guys who are watching right now didn't catch it yesterday, I was on Captain's Table with Griffin RPG and Fastcart from Soul Citizens, along with Paul, yesterday, talking about Death of a Spaceman and medical, and is that plan still viable? What needs to happen for that to work? Clearing up some misconceptions. It was a good chat, so catch that on his channel. The team are currently updating links that utilize motion warp, such as mantle or jumping down, to rely on specific metrics. Okay, so that's the other thing, is navigation links to connect external zones. If the connection from one zone to another, if the logical connection is mantling or using a ladder, that also utilizes the navigation link system. It's not just the transport system, but that's another one ring system for telling the AI how to get to where they need to go. To rely on specific metrics which will enable them to be utilized by different categories of creatures. Oh. Okay. So, the Copion will be able to jump down and bound down rocks and stuff, or other things will be able to mantle up a wall to get at you. That sounds terrifying. Oh, God. Oh, I'm safe up here. They can't climb up that. Oh, they're climbing up the wall. Oh, God. I'm going to get 8. Updates were also made to the chase movement request to allow multiple destinations around bigger targets like ground vehicles or apex creatures. Ah. Interesting. NPCs chasing apex creatures, NPCs chasing ground vehicles. Things are going to get interesting. Spicy. The first stage of ongoing improvements to 3D navigation was completed. This involved voxelizing custom areas and allowing them to define granularity. Currently, the voxelization data is being used to improve collision avoidance during AI ship flight. That's one thing I noticed a lot of for the Invictus Launch Week patch when we had all the flight combat missions for Gilly. Is quite frequently the NPCs would fly into an asteroid and I would get the kill. Not quite frequently, but often enough. It was noticeable. And so they're improving that so that way they can navigate around objects better in space. But this is not only for ship flight, but this also involves EVA. So NPCs will be EVAing in the future and EVAing around objects. And so that will involve EVAing in space, but also in areas without gravity in space. So, space stations, derelict ships, splat. I even had it happen where a Connie hit a rock right in front of them and spun off the rock and flew into my ship and killed me. Because they ricocheted off of an asteroid that they clearly should have been able to avoid. But yeah, that was disappointing. The core work for serializing subsumption variables was completed, which is used for network synchronization and the save and load mechanism. So the subsumption variables is what will allow the state of things to be transferred between serializing the subsumption variables makes it more efficient and more reliable to synchronize the state of things across servers and across replicants, aka individual replication layers. It also allows for things to stow onto the entity graph when they despawn, or when they're no longer being simulated on a server because players leave, and unstowed in the correct state. So that's a really good thing. This is part of, when you think about things, one of the things that screws up NPCs and causing them to stand on chairs and T-pose and stuff, it's because they are not being loaded back onto the server. Their entity state is not being loaded back onto the server appropriately because it wasn't stowed accurately, or the data was corrupted during that process. And so that's what they're doing with serializing the subsumption variables, is allowing things, anything to do with NPCs and AI to sync better across the network. And also to save and load, stow and unstow better. So this is what will make it for pardon me. So if you can imagine a large-scale space battle, or even a large-scale ground battle, and you've got multiple servers simulating a whole bunch of NPC ships or a whole bunch of NPC characters involved in it doesn't have to be a battle, but we'll use that as an example. That information has to be transmitted not only across servers, but if it's big enough, it has to be transmitted from one replicant to another accurately and at the right time. It has to be synced up appropriately in order to improve desync in a large scale environment like that. but also to even in small scale, because the server is simulating what a ship or an NPC is doing, and that state of them is, handed off to the replication layer, which then hands it to you, and that's how you see it. So whether it's a single server all the way across multiple servers, like if you remember the demonstration for server meshing that they did a couple of years ago, where they were kicking things across server boundaries, changing it over to serialization of all these variables will allow for these things there to be less desync and less errors, more accuracy, both in real time, but also when things are despawned and then spawned back in when players leave and enter an area. So long story short, really good thing. For the subsumption conversation feature, a clustering algorithm was added to split participants into more meaningful groups. This group data will be used to create avoidance obstacles, meaning NPCs will be able to avoid others already in a conversation group. So they won't have people walking into the middle of a conversation and acting all super rude. On the tool side, multiple usability improvements were made to StarScript, such as allowing bulk node deletion and the discarding of invalid subplatforms when loading a platform, or making a document as modified when reordering variables. So, animation. The facial animation team recorded and processed content for upcoming releases for both new and existing mission givers, including Wicklow. New and existing mission givers, including Wicklow. So, more mission givers. Yay. Give more. Existing mission givers, so ones that we already have.
Did we just become best friends? Yep.
Hey, Victoria, thanks for the 12-month the sub. Thanks for coming and hanging out. Hope you're doing good, buddy. Good to see you yesterday while we're doing Captain's Table. But yeah, give more mission givers, give more comms calls, all that. They also continue to provide new voice packs that will populate generic NPCs throughout the verse, and began supporting the recently added Newsflash content. Animations were developed for an upcoming creature too. For upcoming creatures. So because they didn't name it, it wouldn't be the Valkar. We already knew about the Valkar, I think. So we're going to be seeing even more creatures other than what we just got, because we already knew about those, I think. So when they talk about the new and existing mission givers, one of the scanner anomalies I want to do next month, and probably make it a regular thing, is I want to concept missions. And take missions that we don't have yet or that need to be updated, and sort of lay out the design for how they might look with screenshots, maybe some clips, just talk about how those things might work. And one of the first ones I want to do is I want to sort of concept how the rescue missions could work. Because if you remember, like 3 or 4 years ago, they were on the progress tracker, and obviously they never made it into game. But with the Apollo coming in the not too distant future, if the Apollo is being worked on, I have this gut feeling that we're going to be getting rescue missions to come with the Apollo. And so I want to take a stab at what those might look like and offer suggestions to CIG, whether they're maybe they're watching, maybe they're not, maybe somebody will forward it on to them, to ways that they could develop these missions, especially if they want to incorporate some good believability into them. Like I talked briefly about it on Captain's Table yesterday, having your mission giver, your comms calls come from a dispatcher, but you're having multiple dispatchers for the different rescue organizations in a system that you're doing missions for, they dispatch you. They come over on you take the mission from your Obi glass, and that generates the comms call, and they dispatch you on your MFD to tell you what's going on. To say, hey, thanks for taking this call. We've got a Delta level call at this location. It's unknown if there's hostiles still in the area. We have 3 confirmed casualties with unknown injuries. Approach at your own risk. That sort of thing, and give you a little bit of guidance about that in the comms call, and that way they could record it, so that way there's different variations based off of the nature of the call, whether there's enemy in the area or other hazards, like if like, hey, there was there's an incident at this distribution center. I'm being told that there's hazardous weather, around the area. Use caution when approaching the distribution center. And you have variation on whether how many patients there are, or you don't, or it's if you do know how many there are, 1, 2, 3, 5, something like that. The severity of the injuries, essentially giving you a brief 9-line, a mix of like a 9-line slash civilianized dispatch that tells you the basics of what you need to know for this rescue mission that you're going to go do. And that way you can decide how you want to go do that mission, or whether it's time sensitive, how time sensitive it is, those sorts of things that would really immerse you in the experience of being a rescue worker and an EMS provider in the verse. And they could change based off the level of mission that you're able to take and your reputation with them. Oh, we're so glad you took this one. We really need we really need some of your experience on this call. We've got a mass casualty incident at the space station. It could get really cool really fast. Anyway, I digress. Pardon me. Character art. So May saw the character art team progress with new creatures, multiple, so boy. A heavy armor and gameplay rewards. Was it the heavy armor? No, it's the new utility armor that got delayed. We'll read about that in the Roadmap Roundup. They also kicked off a light armor. The concept art team prepared handoff sheets and explored future in-game armor rewards. Yay, more in-game rewards, especially FPS gear, and especially as they continue to differentiate the FPS gear and get us towards what they talked about at CitizenCon. Ship art. As usual, May was extremely busy for the vehicle content teams as they supported new releases, progressed with upcoming vehicles, and kicked off projects for the next year or so. In Europe, 4 unannounced ships progressed. The first officially entered production, while the second progressed towards its upcoming white box review gate. The third continued down the production pipeline, with the artist currently awaiting feedback from the Laud Zero review. The fourth received considerable attention during its white box phase, particularly around the cockpit entry requirements, as it will receive entirely new enter and exit animations, something rarely done to this level. Something very bespoke in terms of entirely new enter and exit animations. That'll be interesting to see how that comes to pass. For already announced ships, the Anvil Paladin progressed through Great Box, benefiting from the recent work on the Asgard to help speed up its creation. Yay. 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 I'm hoping that this means that they are continuing along the Anvil backlog, Paladin, and then since we heard a little bit about the work on hacking, maybe Legionnaire after Paladin. I also hope that this means that they will find time in their workload to update the Valkyrie. They did a few updates, but they didn't do the ones that we really need. Sealing off the crew area, putting the hatch in, doing what they did for the Asgard. The Consolidated Outland Pioneer continued its long and extensive lightbox phase. The sheer scale and complexity of this ship mean this is a longer than normal phase vehicle content team. It's great that they are working on the Pioneer. It's going to be interesting to see how long it actually ends up taking for them to make it. But I think it'll also be interesting to see if they put into production additional Consolidated Outland ships during the production of the Pioneer, or nearly after, or we get concepts that they work on after doing the work on or doing some of the work on the Pioneer, because I love the design, the style of the Pioneer, and I hope they do more for Consolidated Outland like it. Yeah, Northern Trooper. I said the word hacking, so you were summoned. Side note, I'm surprised we haven't seen an Anvil Corvette or larger ship for combat. I am very surprised too. I think it's more just due to them wanting to avoid more large concepts. And I'm, again, just hoping beyond hope that the work on Anvil will mean that also that after the Legionnaire goes into production, that they'll tackle the Liberator next year. And maybe once Liberator is into production, we'll get a large Anvil ship. Because obviously it's just a whole bunch of mediums and smalls besides the Carrack until the Liberator comes out. Then, after a short pause to help close out the Invictus ships, work resumed on the Ironclad with a focus on blocking out every room with the appropriate Drake kits. This is going to be interesting to see how quickly they can get the Ironclad put together based off how much is able to be reused. But also, the Ironclad is meant to have, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Ironclad cockpit is meant to detach just like the Cutlass one is meant to detach. So if it's going to release, it should have that feature when it releases. Am I remembering right? I should know better because I own both of them. But it's been so long. Not like terribly long, but been long enough. Yeah. Hold on. Yeah, Caterpillar detaches, but the Drake Ironclad trans. There we go. I was just looking at it the other day. Yeah, the Caterpillar is supposed to detach, but it doesn't yet. But I remember them talking about this during the Q&A. Yeah, detachable command module with one size 2 remote turret. So, if the Ironclad is in production and we have vehicle, they will have to make sure that vehicle to vehicle docking works appropriately, because right now there's issues with it for refueling, but also for just the Connie. It does not work it doesn't work reliably, at least in my experience. I haven't done it recently. Yeah, ship to ship docking. I hope that when they update the feature or go back and revisit it in order to do this for the Ironclad, I hope they don't release the Ironclad without this. I think that would be a mistake. But I think that would require them to go back and revisit that feature, bring it up to standard. But I hope at the same time when they do that is when they will do the work needed to allow for ship to ship docking for not just refueling and the Connie. We have so many ships with docking collars that are meant to be able to dock to other ships. the Connie, it has docking collars on either side that are meant to dock to other ships. The Cuddies, the Caterpillar, so make that work. Oh yeah, okay. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how quickly the Ironclad can progress through development. That said, there are some unique bits to it that could take a little bit of extra time. Like the repair room. How's that going to work? Are they going to release it without that being in? Are they planning on intending for that to be done? What's that going to work? How's that going to work in game? I don't know. With the Guardian MX Live, the North American teams moved on to closing out an upcoming variant for its impending release. We know that is assuming that's the Prowler utility. With the ship successfully passing its final review. Yeah, definitely Prowler utility. Another unannounced vehicle passed its white box review following minor adjustments to one of its key mechanics. Key mechanics. The RSI Apollo, Medevac, and Triage passed their gray box reviews with a focus on ensuring each medbed module tier, so that apparently they're all coming, is distinct without being disruptively different to use. And so it sounds like each module, it's not just swapping out the beds and each one fits in the same module, but you swap out the whole module. So they don't want it to be being... each medbed module tier is distinct without being disruptively different to use. And I hope that this will help define the differentiation more between the different med beds, so you have a better idea what you're getting into, and it rewards people for knowing the different beds and how they work. The RSI Perseus continued through Great Box, ready for its gate review early this month. So it's getting ready to hopefully pass its gray box gate review and move on to final art, which will take several months. But here we are. We're nearing the end of June, third week of June, and this was May. So that's a good thing. Community. The community team spent much of May breaking down community feedback sentiment across all platforms and ensuring its delivery to the right teams internally. The team published the save the date announcement for Invictus Launch Week 2955, as well as providing Spectrum support with an informative guide and FAQ. So just to remind everybody, a lot of what the community team does is they, I don't want to use the word troll, but they sift through everything in Spectrum and on Reddit and other things and forward sentiment and posts and questions to the appropriate devs. So the vast majority of the time a dev responds to something, especially on Spectrum, it's because the community team saw it and they're like, hey, can you address this? Can you respond to this? It's much less often that the devs were looking for things to respond to. So yay, community team, thank you for your hard work. They also advised the community of the new opportunity for interest owners to name their ship. Mine is now named the Void of Respect. I don't remember how we came up with that name, Blizzrad, but it's stuck. Let's see. And made players aware of the changes introduced with Alpha 4.1.1. Support for Invictus and the accompanying free fly also included multiple comm links, such as the manufacturer schedule, a referral bonus promotion. Mine is the Spiteful Scythian. Very cool. And Q&As for the Grey Cat MTC. Love that little vehicle. The Mirai Guardian MX and Anvil Asgard. The team also supported a social media selfie screenshot contest, which allowed players to show off their best looks at a variety of exotic locations around the verse. And that was really cool to see people taking their screenshots in the exact same spots. Throughout May, the team connected with the community as part of the 2025 Bar Citizen World Tour. This included venues in the United States, Korea, China, Spain, Germany, and France. The team published an invitation to the upcoming International Bar Citizen Weekend 2025 and have plans to visit additional locations throughout the year. Correspondingly, submissions were announced for the CitizenCon Direct watch parties that will pair the camaraderie of Bar Citizen with the energy of CitizenCon. The team is currently deep in planning for this year's event, which is shaping up to be a fun one. Finally, alongside evergreen tasks such as This Week in Star Citizen, the bi-weekly roadmap updates and roundups, monthly reports like this one, and the monthly refresh of the Arena Commander schedule, the community team supported the epic conclusion of the System 7 race series presented by Atmo Esports. Some good information came out of the Beijing Bar Citizen. That said, trust but verify, difficult to verify, but interesting things to hear coming out of there. And Puppet, one of my community members, was at the Bar Citizen in Manchester recently and got to talk to Chris Roberts himself. And he did a short write-up on that. So if you're interested in that, hop in my Discord. You can ping myself or Puppet. I pinned it in the Star Citizen discussion channel. It's a good read. Pardon me. Core gameplay, the long one. Core gameplay are currently working through a long list of weapon improvements to further modernize the FPS experience for both Squadron 42 and Star Citizen, including tweaking how disruptive weapon raising is to the flow of combat. Engineering and design collaborated to iterate on these improvements and provide more polished combat gameplay. Here we go. Northern Trooper. Here it is. Work on hacking continued, which involved highlighting suggested abilities to certain gameplay situations. It continued. So it was happening, and they're continuing it. Abilities are also now disabled when they're not applicable in a specific situation to better explain hacking gameplay. God, I got the hiccups from my cocktail. The hacking terminal now also supports color-coded terminal output for better clarity. We deserve a hacking ISC. We absolutely do. We deserve a hacking ISC like they did for engineering 3 different times. We need at least one. Because it's been sitting on the shelf collecting dust with no updates for 4 years. And we, we all have so many questions. And like this little blurb they just gave us, we really don't have any context for what this means. Abilities, color-coded terminal output for better clarity, but highlighting suggested abilities. Like, how does this work? This little drop right here, as if we knew what the fuck they were talking about, is such a tease, such a tease. And I'm not all that into hacking. I haven't been obsessed with it like Northern Trooper is, but it is a mechanic that I've always loved in sci-fi games or in TTRPGs. Because to me, hacking is, I want to hack open to here's the door. Oh, I can hack it. Oh, I want to find out what's behind the door. I have to know. There's a chest. I can loot. There's loot in that chest. I need to hack the chest. I have to hack this chest. I physically cannot walk away. It's a compulsive thing for me. It's just like lockpicking in Elder Scrolls or something like that. It's something that, it's just something I always put points in, or something I always do, because the curiosity always gets the better of me. And I love breaching and I love cutting through things. It's just having another tool to be able to get, to open up this loot box, to be able to open up this door to find out what's behind it, to get the little lore bit or something. More ways to complete missions. Shortcuts. It offers so much, and we don't have it. Imagine putting a malware bomb on an enemy ship that goes off when entering atmosphere. Oh gosh. Yeah. Citizen Dex says, I personally hope hacking plays into ship crew controls, making only crew members access certain things on certain ships. Oh, yeah, and locking certain things out. I mean, it might, we don't know. It could be like part of the, another one of those one ring, multi-system systems where, it's, hack the tech for hacking also allows for X. I want non-kinetic PvP. Hacking is one of them. Yep. Hacking is always a mechanic I've really enjoyed, even if I don't do it as part of like an offensive thing. It's a necessary game element for me in a lot of the things that I enjoy. It would also be a really great way to add more flavor to engineering or repair missions. Hey, this system went down. It isn't broken, but the software is fucked. Or somebody, put a virus in it. Okay, well, we need the air recyclers back up on the station. Otherwise, people are going to die. Can you, hack into this system and defeat the virus? That's a great mission. That's an awesome mission. Or we suffered an EMP, and we need you to bring the system back online, and you have to use hacking to do it. In short, I shouldn't be able to sneak on board trees, Idris, and remove fuses without hacking security systems. Oh yeah, definitely. If you want to open up the door, you either got to cut it or blow it open or hack it. And you shouldn't be able to just, it should, restrict you. You have to do something in order to get access to the things to disable a ship, or not just a ship, but a location. The team also wrapped up work on the new Argo Atlas ICTI and Geo ICTI, both of which support weapons instead of their utility attachments. Additional bug fixes and polish are underway, but the team is excited to further expand the Atlas platform and provide players with more options on the battlefield. I want a Hotwire ship. Yeah. As part of the ongoing quality of life initiative, core gameplay are working on improvements to the harvestable and loot systems. This is to address various performance issues and, more importantly, give the designers more control over how harvestables and loot are spawned. Great. Yeah, the loot tables are not great. There's just so much junk, and the junk being non-contextual is kind of annoying, and I know it's something they wanted to work on. But who harvests anything? And I think it's great with them wanting to get crafting into tech preview this year, but also having harvestables be part of missions for Wicklow and others, that more people are going to be doing, harvestables and looking for harvestables. So I'm glad that they're finally, that's a thing that was implemented, and no one ever did because there was no value in it. Well, now they're adding value to it. So it needs to work. I like how they do it in the movies. Yeah. This is to address various performance issues and, more importantly, give the designers more control over how harvestables and loot are spawned. For Alpha 4.1.1, the devs enabled the ability for players to quantum travel to their own vehicles, which was received positively by the community. It is a great feature. I've really been enjoying living out of my Idris, even when I'm playing solo. But there are some issues with it that I hope will get addressed soon. The devs have confirmed it, but like your quantum travel point back to your for me, my Idris, it doesn't persist through play sessions. So if I bedlog on my Idris, I then have to, when I log back in, if I leave it, that QT point isn't there. I have to store my ship and unstore my ship, so I have to go dock at a station or land at in a hangar, store it, and then unstore it for it to work again. The same thing if your spawn point. You have to you have to frequently update your regen point on the Idris if you want it to work, which is important because it's the only ship with a tier 1 bed. So as far as I know, there's no range limitation to it. Item recovery is currently progressing with tasks for a tier 1 progressing. One of the things that I brought up for Death of a Spaceman is to encourage people to wait for rescue as part of Death of the Spaceman and being downed. It is if you press backspace when you're downed, and okay, that simulates an NPC coming and rescuing you and taking you to the ER. If you press backspace and you don't wait for a friend, or if you weren't playing with friends, you're playing alone and you got down, or you don't want to pay the money to have NPCs come and revive you on scene because it costs too much, I think that should allow your body to be looted. But if you are downed and there are players about, or even if there aren't players about, and you wait for NPCs or players to come and revive you on scene, where you're downed, your body is locked. It can't get looted. And I think that's a good way to incentivize people to play together, is to avoid that friction, to allow for them to, not have to backspace and wake up in a clinic and then have to travel back. It's like, okay, well, I will wait a couple minutes to get revived because my friends are going to finish this firefight. And then, or I will pay the money because I don't want to have to start, come all the way back to this mission location. And I don't want to run the risk of, a player looting my body in the meantime. I will pay the money for NPCs to arrive on scene, spawn out of a spawn closet or whatever, revive me, and then I can go about the mission, or I can be like, okay, I've got injuries, I'm going to go back to the hospital, or they can take you to the hospital. No, Stark's realities. That's not the intent. If you backspace out of downed, it's not meant to be regen. Backspace from when you are downed, and you are what Richard Tyrer literally said is you give up the ghost, and NPC law enforcement or rescue come and take you to a clinic. That's part of their plan. It's meant to reflect how things happen in real life. If you are down, you're just saying you're not waiting for somebody to revive you on scene. You're just going to. It's not meant to mean dead. He differentiates it because there's three. He calls them 3 deaths, and you didn't die because you didn't regen. You're just giving up your body, but you can go back to, you can go back there. But it's meant to transport you back to a clinic, as if NPCs came and got you, and you're supposed to have insurance. Like, this is all in a quote. I promise you. I have watched it 1,000 times because it's consistent as part of Death of a Spaceman. It's consistent with regeneration because they said it in like the first few sentences about regeneration. That's the plan. They don't want you to be dying constantly. They want you to be downed and get brought back to a clinic as if you didn't die, because that's the whole point of having 30th century medical and all this protective stuff. They don't want you dying. That's why the game is different. Sorry, tangent, but that is not how it's meant to work. It has never been how it's intended to work. The only problem is the actor status system that we have is a legacy system. And it cannot differentiate between you dying and being regened or you respawning as if you fade to black and some NPC EMTs come and pick you up and take you to the hospital. But they want it to reflect how it is in real life, where, okay, you faded to black, but someone came and got you, and you woke up in the hospital and you got your stuff. But it is never meant to be where you're going to backspace and you die. I absolutely promise you that is not their intent. But the thing is, no one listened when Chris Roberts and Richard Tyrer were going on about Death of a Spaceman for an hour. back in 2020 while they were concepting regen. No one read the regen the lore maker's guide to regeneration. They got a few summaries from content creators who didn't read it or didn't read it thoroughly and didn't read Death of a Spaceman in the first place. No one read the original Death of a Spaceman, except for people like me. But this has always been the intent, is they don't want you to die frequently. They want you to be downed and have to go back, to a hospital, if you don't wait for help. But they don't want you. There's always been the idea that NPCs would come and pick you up as if, you were downed and you called 911. If that makes sense. I'm not going to play the clip right now, but if you want, you can hop in my Discord and I've got all the citations. I've got all the things. That's why I'm so confident about this, because regen doesn't work if you are constantly pressing backspace and giving up the ghost and dying. The whole concept of regen is you're meant to be avoiding death, and regen is only supposed to be there in the advent of catastrophic death. Again, they literally spell that out in the first couple sentences about regeneration. They had to have a way for catastrophic death where NPCs couldn't come and rescue you and bring you back to a hospital. That's what regen's for, is you took a size 9 torpedo to the face, or, a reclaimer crash landed on top of you. NPCs can't come and rescue you from that. Your body's not recoverable. But there's always the idea is that advanced medicine would be able to recover you from nearly anything. And for what it can't recover you from is why we have regen. Regen isn't meant to be 10,000 lives, 500 lives. Regen is meant to be, you have 9, in essence. So that way you aren't, starting a new character simply because, the unthinkable happened. It's just there to give you a few more lives, for when the unthinkable does happen, but to incentivize you to play a bit smart. But that's my hope for something like that, is that they will incentivize you, but also make it so that way you can't get looted if somebody's waiting for you to you're waiting for somebody to come in and rescue you. Players can't come along and loot you unless you give up. And you get magicked back to the hospital as if NPCs came and rescued you. As part of the space combat focused content in Alpha 4.1.1, core gameplay supported design and tweaking and tuning recoil for vehicle weapons. Yeah, a lot of recoil in the big turrets on the Idris and the Polaris, which I think is great fun. Really improves the experience. As an additional stepping stone toward the new vehicle radar and scanning system, and just to remind everyone, radar and scanning is a holistic feature. The radar and scanning for ships, vehicles, and the radar and scanning for players, and how signatures work, it's all a holistic system, so that way you can detect characters with the with radar and scanning on your ship, and they will detect those signatures, as well as your character will be able to detect the signatures of vehicles. Pardon me. And not just vehicles, but anything that gives up emissions. So power plants, components and stuff, because those things will be part of engineering within structures. So if you scan because you're looking for a component in order to disable a facility, you could do your scan thing, and it would tell you, if you are in, if you can detect it, the components you're looking for, to remove or destroy them, hack them, what have you. So that's why it's very exciting to hear that radar and scanning is one of the first tech preview things to be coming online, because this is something we really need for so many aspects of gameplay. But for the new vehicle and radar scanning system, changes were made to the information available to players before a ship is scanned. The team are currently reviewing the feedback that came from this change and are looking to implement improvements that smooth out that flow. Quantum interdiction is also being reworked to be more compatible with server meshing, leveraging tech developed for Alpha 4.1 to communicate across different volumes on different servers. This rework is primarily about reliability, not the mechanic itself. So the way you interdict someone isn't changing, but just making it work more reliable and having it function and be compatible with server meshing is what the rework is about. We recognize that there's an imbalance between lawful and unlawful gameplay and want to ensure players on both ends have the tools needed to contend with the other. The recent work on control surfaces reached a major milestone. Oh, that's the other thing. So quantum interdiction, along with radar and scanning and the new QT system, is going to change piracy and unlawful gameplay a whole lot. If you can imagine that your quantum interdiction bubble could be dramatically larger than it is now, and you don't have to be able to see ships or be able to even have them within radar range, but your bubble could be such that you could interdict them. It would tell you that you've interdicted something, and then you have to scan for where they are, and then you quantum boost to where they are, in order to get there before they can make their escape. So that's how that mechanic is eventually intended to work. So that way you can, pull people out of quantum farther away, to make it more reasonable rather than just being, having to be like right on top of them for it to work. The recent work on control surfaces reached a major milestone. Yes. With most of the atmospheric flight model behaviors now in first pass implementation. As part of this, ships will now more accurately reflect the expected flight behavior based on lift, drag, angle of attack, and other factors. Thrusters currently activate smoothly to compensate for different atmospheric densities, while hovering feels more natural. I cannot wait to see this implemented. I hope they tease this for us at CitizenCon, if not more sooner. Because we're actually going to watch a part of that CitizenCon clip from a couple of years ago when I talk about dropships. The core gameplay team fixed numerous issues related to cargo crates intersecting with each other alongside the ability to retrieve multiple vehicles from a hangar. So some people have been speculating that this is what was needed to allow the Atlas and such and the Icties be able to come up from freight elevators. But I think that's not how this reads to me. To me, this reads, if you go into your hangar and you go to the pad, it will show there's a point in the middle of your hangar that is the center point where your ship spawns on it. And if you remember, when we had the old hangar module, if you were there were multiple points on the hangar floor where you could spawn ships based off of how big they were. And it seems like they are trying to bring that back. So in your extra large hangar, you could, spawn, have, it could be big enough, and I don't remember the dimensions, but I'm just spitballing. But it could be, you could have, a single extra large spawn point in the middle, or maybe two large spawn points, like this, staggered or left to right, or 4 medium spawn points. So that way you could bring up 4 medium ships. You could bring up, a medium ship and, some small vehicles, or a large ship and some small vehicles all on the hangar. This could be related to vehicle and vehicle spawning. The little item port bubbles. Yep, exactly. We don't know exactly, but it reads to me more like what we used to have in the hangar module. I'm hoping that same tech might allow for vehicle and vehicle spawning. So if you have a hangar, or a vehicle bay on your ship, that you could spawn, you could, say, okay, I want to spawn my Idris with these ships aboard in the hangar. Because right now, if you park your ship, a ship that fits on the pads within the Idris hangar, and then you stow the Idris, if you go to your ASOP terminal, it will tell you what ships those are and what pads they're on the Idris. So the game knows already. And so that's why those things spawn, back where they were, part of serialization, but also, the ship knows that they're on that pad. So in theory, with this tech or an expansion on it, you could tell it, be like, okay, I've got these 3 pads on my Idris. I don't care about, if it sits min-maxing, 20 ships inside the hangar of my Idris. I just want to put 3 things on the pad. You could say, okay, I want this Hornet here, this Gladius here, and the Legionnaire on the back pad. I don't know. And they would all spawn there if they're at that location. So we'll see. I think that's something that's desperately needed, because that's a huge point of friction for getting your base ship, or even a ship like you want to put your Ursa in your Valkyrie. Or put your Ictes, in your Asgard. All that. It would speed that up an awful lot. The players also now receive a warning when their ship accumulates distortion damage. For upcoming gameplay, medical beds now heal radiation damage, so we know that's in 4.2. A patch was also done to ensure players receive proper visual feedback on radiation in the environment. I'm really liking the way these med beds look, or the med bay looks on the Apollo. I'm assuming because there's one big bed and it has the sort of CAT scanner looking thing, that is meant to be a tier 1 bed. We'll see. There's only one of them, unless there's another one off screen, but I believe that's meant to be a tier 1 bed like the one on the Idris. I really would prefer if the Idris only had tier 2 and tier 3 beds. I feel like tier 1 beds should only be on dedicated hospital dedicated hospital ships. I think that would encourage the use of hospital ships and encourage the use of medevac, and allow for a lot more use of medics to treat symptoms until people can get to a hospital ship or get to an appropriate hospital, especially with tier 1 injuries meant to be fairly infrequent, but significant. So we'll see. The transit rework. This is a big deal. Internally referred to as the transport system, continued toward the first playable version for internal validation. So first playable version for internal validation. Still a long ways to go. The team moved transport from push system to serialized variables, again, to allow for things to stow and unstow, because that's the state of elevators and trams when players are not around, needs to save appropriately, and it also needs to transfer between servers, and even between replicants appropriatly. So based off player population, you could say IAE is going on at New Babbage, and there's so many people there that you might have to have multiple replicants, not just multiple servers handling New Babbage, but maybe even multiple replicants breaking up the different entity zones across multiple servers in order to keep it working right. Well, the tram system has to communicate from one to the other. And so by having the variables for the trams and the transport system be serialized, it should make it work more appropriately in the way it transports you from server to server, and eventually from not shard, but across replicants, from one replication layer to another within a shard, if that ends up being a thing. But at least from server to server, because the idea is that a space station could be a single replication layer and have multiple servers simulating it because there's so many people there. Well, if you're going from one server to another on the elevator, you being on that and the state of you being on that needs to get handed off from one server to another accurately, and not have desync and be more reliable. And that's why what this transition is for. From push system to serialized variables on the transport manager for improved reliability. To validate the new system, design trialed the transport system in the new Babbage HABs. Here we go. They're currently addressing feedback and issues resulting from the test. For the Apex Valakar, core gameplay supported the character and AI teams on multiple fronts. For example, irradiated Apex Valakar projectiles will now spawn hazard volumes that damage the player over time. The Apex creature also spawns a molehill wherever it exits or enters the ground. FPS radar and scanning also progressed. Hell yeah. The devs can now specify if contacts should remain visible for extended periods after they have been first scanned. And that'll help reduce clutter, which is useful to designers in curated situations. Things disappearing and only being able to be revealed for short periods. Additionally, they can now reduce the signature of a contact if it's considered dead. So you won't be able to detect dead bodies as easily as live people. For example, dead NPCs are no longer detectable from the same distance as living ones. As part of the upcoming patch release, a lot of feedback was received around the reliability and quality of the new comms notifications. As a result, the team is working through various improvements to ensure mission givers appear at their best and don't awkwardly look at players. Yeah, don't make it weird. Finally, for core gameplay, the team are currently supporting an upcoming global event, including new ways to track and to display player progress. Pardon me. Lighting supported all recent and upcoming patch releases, including adding environmental and dynamic lighting to interactable event locations in Pyro. I will say that this location is really beautiful with all the flowers and the ground cover and these trees. The locations team continued to support the ongoing monthly content releases. Last month, there was a particular focus on Invictus launch week, with the devs looking forward to releases in July and August, alongside updates to Wicklow. Remember, Jared said during the Invictus launch week that he was really looking forward to the July patch. So that's going to be interesting. Narrative. May brought with it a flurry of activity for the narrative team. The top of the month saw them tackling bugs found in Alpha 4.1.1 PTU in preparation for the patch's full release. Simultaneously, members of the team finalized new content that will be heavily narrative focused and even feature audio recordings for players to discover. Here we are. Beyond that, dozens of new missions contracts were created for upcoming gameplay to not only provide players with critical information, but a sense of character as well. Upcoming gameplay. The writers also worked on scripts for new mission providers who will be making an appearance later this year. Please, something that isn't combat. Because of the time involved with writing, recording, and processing performances, there's an interesting balance of locking down a script while allowing for the design team to continue refining the gameplay as they continue development. This often means that we will record alternate lines that would be useful in case the scope or design of a new mission needs to be adjusted closer to release. Narrative team. Finally, the team solidified the story plans for next year, taking the initial high-level outline and pulling in more details to help other teams continue with their planning. Online technology. In May, the network team continued work on dynamic server meshing. There it is. There's been a few little mentions here and there and confirmations from various devs that they are working on it, and here it is in the monthly report. Separating the DGS assignment from the territory manager. The objective is to base territory runtime distribution on several factors, including entity and player distribution and overall shard occupancy. Subsequent work will remove territories from the equation altogether, allowing compute resources to be deployed exactly where they're needed. So what they're talking about is the difference between dynamic server meshing V1 and V2, where in V1, it would dynamically spin up servers for set locations like we have now. So they would set the boundaries of territories in a static configuration, but they would allow for them to say, okay, Microtech can be subdivided in up to 12 different servers, but it can also be dropped down to one server, based off of how many entities are there and how many players are there, and anything in between. Whereas in the future with Dynamic V2, there would be essentially theoretically no limit, but the server boundaries in terms of territory wouldn't be fixed. It would be scale up and down dynamically without a set boundary, like saying New Babbage and this continent versus that continent and so on. The live tools team worked on improving moderation tools to provide a better user experience for everyone. They also improved the solution that allows the publishing team to schedule in-game messages and continue to add smaller improvements to the various tools used across development. New infrastructure was deployed to better handle game crashes and errors too. Online services continued work on the item imprint system, including the design aspects, and progressed with diffusion removal to lay the groundwork for the social refactor. Here we go. Online services also continue to help fix various issues that were discovered by players alongside minor improvements to the mission system tools. UI. And nothing VFX. In May, the team completed the UI for an upcoming event, created various screens to support the narrative and gameplay. Once completed, the design teams kicked off plans for the next one. The new Mirai UI was also finished, which the team kept quiet until the launch of the Guardian MX. Not really my style, but I could see why some people like it. It's a little bit hard on my eyes, I think. Mirai uses vibrant colors and dynamic shapes, which were great fun to work on and mark an interesting departure from the retro sci-fi look of other styles like the Drake and Aegis UI team. The new layout and shapes were a challenge to implement with the existing setup, so the teams addressed the problems and rewrote the UI core to make it easier to create more interesting styles in the future. Elsewhere, performance improvements continued with the team investigating spreading UI processing across multiple cores. And this is really needed because there's a lot of aspects of the Moby-Glass and different apps and even the star map that can chug pretty bad. Visual prototypes were also worked on for some interesting but currently confidential 3D interactive UIs to replace one of the older systems in the game. That's a tease. If you remember the 3D interactive UIs that they showed off a couple years ago, and I remember Naz always loved to show that clip, and I can't remember what it was from. I think it was from a Squadron video. I think you guys know what I'm talking about though, where they had that like wraparound like hanger module thing, where you could configure your ship and such. So we'll see. Anyway, that is it for the May monthly report for Star Citizen. Obviously it covers Squadron stuff too. Thought it was an SCL showcase. Yeah, I can't remember where that came from. I think you guys know what I'm talking about though, because it looked like it was on like an Idris hangar floor, and that thing popped up and you could wrapped around him. But there was also that 3D warning UI and such. The console update of the MX to the rest of the Guardians is nice. Console update. What do you mean by the console update? Oh, the MFTs. Okay. I see what you're talking about. Yeah, I do like the layout. It's just the stark colors are kind of hard on my eyes. It's kind of hard to look at. I think it's more just the blue on the blue, bluey purple and stuff. It's just hard for me to look at. I need things to be a bit more muted, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, let's switch screens real quick, and that way I'll have a nice little timestamp before we take a look at the roadmap roundups real quick. Alrighty, we'll close the monthly report. We'll get into the June 4th roadmap roundup. Stark's Reality says blue on blue is such a bad idea as it doesn't give you anything to focus on. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I couldn't put it into words. I just know that looking at it was like, it just, I don't know. June 4th roadmap roundup. So obviously this is a little bit dated. We're a couple weeks out from this, but I just wanted to catch up on these things. Hello everyone. Every 2 weeks we accompany the roadmap update with a brief explanatory note to give you insight into the decision making that led to any changes. This is part of an effort to make our communications more transparent, more specific, and more insightful for all of you who helped make Star Citizen and Squadron 42 possible. Just a reminder, the 1.0 column showcases features and content planned for inclusion in or before Star Citizen 1.0. This means you may not have to wait for the 1.0 release to experience them. As features content in the 1.0 column become ready, they will migrate left into a point patch column for release. So I think that the reason they are pointing this in is because I wouldn't be surprised if in the not too distant future, a thing from the 1.0 column makes its way into the release view column. Yeah, Hot Tech Roadmap Roundup feels like another avenue to publish patch notes. Yeah, it's really not insightful right now because it's really just regurgitating things that we already know from the patch notes if you follow them at all. I do always cover it just to make sure and just to make sure there isn't anything I'm missing because it pays to be thorough. So release view 4.2.0 irradiated Apex Valakar. Adding the irradiated Apex Valakar that players can find near the research facility while doing the Stormbreaker sandbox activity. This was previously listed under the new creatures card. This card has been set to committed. Irradiated adult and irradiated juvenile, same thing, but for those species. Irradiated Copion. What's interesting to me about this is adding in the radiation part. So if they can add radiation, what other modifiers, abilities, pardon me, can they give to base creatures to differentiate them from their the base version? If they can spit if their new attack is radiated and it spawns different loot. Poison, fire, acid, maybe cold, like a what's the like like a cryo type attack. The possibilities are really endless. So who knows what kind of crazy shit we're going to see. New hairstyles in 4.2 and 4 new additional hairstyles. Obviously radiation, dangerous radiation zones, the irradiated attack from the Valakar, receiving radiation damage requires you to use specialized gear and notate it. It'll be interesting when we're able to scan and see that stuff. And I hope to see when we get more medical gameplay. I hope that healing radiation damage is has some differentiation from other types of damage. The ASD research facility, strategically located on Pyro 1. Associated science and development facilities that provide essential infrastructure and sandbox gameplay opportunities for planetary operations. ASD data center, strategically placed on Pyro 4. ASD data centers are providing key infrastructure and sandbox gameplay opportunities for planetary operations. Stormbreaker sandbox activity, adding the Stormbreaker sandbox activity, utilizing new gameplay mechanics to tell new stories in the verse. So new stories. So here's the thing. This is a sandbox activity And the way they've talked about it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it's meant to be evergreen. If the regen crisis isn't meant to be, eventually it's going to have to come to a head and be resolved in some way, shape, or form. So what's going to happen to these locations and the content there? Or will they modify it and make it into something else? What's going to be the point of these locations if you're not going there as part of the regen crisis? I don't know. Argo Atlas Icti, adding the Atlas Icti, the Atlas Geo Icti, versatile new combat suits developed for upcoming challenges, ready to prove their value in an upcoming new sandbox activity. They both are equipped with dual weapons, and the Geo Icti version keeps its backpack for a jumping ability with adjusted gear slots to fit FPS weapons and gadgets. Set to committed. I love how they made this only earnable in-game, because not only does it get people playing the game, but it also drives sales of the Atlas and the Geo. Combat players didn't buy the Atlas and the Geo because they don't need a cargo loader. They didn't need a mining mech. But if they want the combat version, now they will buy that in order to farm the stuff that they need in order to convert them into combat mechs. So it even though it's a win for PR for CIG by making it only earnable in game, but because one of the things that goes into earning it is something you can buy, it drives sales from people who wouldn't have bought it already. There you go. Everybody wins. The perfect solution. No notes. Wicklow special ships. Adding multiple new ships and vehicles to the ever-expanding Wicklow's Emporium Mirai Guardian QI, Anvil Mark II Super Hornet, Miss Fortune, Apoa Nox, Mirai Guardian, RSI Ursa Medevac. These ships and vehicles can be unlocked by bringing the NPC Wicklow a number of favors in exchange for rewards. Volt Laser Shotgun Prism, adding a cutting-edge energy shotgun that ramps up its pellet spread with heat, delivering brutal close-range bursts powered by Volt. Sterling Exploration Suit. Introducing the Sterling Exploration Suit, a heavy utility armor built to withstand extreme radiation, enabling safe traversal through the most hazardous zones. Interhype says, I feel like places like those get shut down or maybe transformed to continue the crazy mad scientist stuff. Yeah, I mean, mad scientists, okay, well, this is different. The regen crisis is not ongoing, and there's new mad scientist stuff going on. Or it gets converted into not mad scientist stuff, or it becomes a derelict location, with squatters. I don't know. Northern Trooper says, I feel like they missed the mark with the Guardian MX and QI. Why is that? Do tell. I have no skin in the game. I'm not a Mirai person, and I'm certainly not a fighter or someone who's interested in quantum interdiction. QI should have dampener and snare. Oh, because of the size? Yeah, I think that given its size, especially in relation to the Mantis, and the MX is bloated. Oh, because it has all that interior space? I don't know. I kind of like a heavy fighter with an interior. I think it's kind of cool. Because it's a good solo mission runner. You can do space combat with it. You can go run FPS missions. You can live out of it. I kind of thought it did when I first seen it. I don't know. I haven't even hardly looked at it because it's just not something I'm interested in at all. So you guys tell me. It not having both, yeah, I do kind of feel like it's based off its size, and the amount of internal volume it has and everything. It's not like the the RSI X-Wing, which doesn't have a lot of internal volume. It makes sense that that's just a interdiction versus both. Scorpius, there you go. Oh, I love that, but I can fit my Guardian the Polaris, but the MX doesn't fit in any hangar except the 890, I believe. It's not a hangar-based ship, though. That's the thing. If it's meant to fit in a hangar, it's because it's meant to be carrier or station-based. If it's bigger like that, it doesn't really need to be transported in a hangar because it has enough quantum fuel and range, and livability. It's, I don't know. Dynamic rain. Hell yeah. This is straight up vibes. Oh my gosh. Seeing the rain in all these different locations, which is backwards for the regular Guardian. I don't know. I hadn't given it much thought. I think they might have to do some tuning, but for a ship that size, if you're meant to be able to, there's a difference between carrier-based and station-based. And I don't think every large ship or large, heavy fighter, it needs to be long range either, especially given that we are very quickly moving to the you not moving between planetary systems on a regular basis game. And so you really don't need the range, and a lot of places you're not going to be needing, move it. The use of a carrier is more to be able to move power around and deploy it quickly, not to necessarily to transition it from one planetary system to another. If that makes sense, to provide near space support. And I think that's another thing that people get wrong, is they think of it as only I need this to carry my ships from one far-flung place to another, and it's not just that. It's to provide near space support and a place to come back to, in an area. If you think of carrier-borne fighters right now, the purpose of the carrier isn't just to bring them from San Diego to the Persian Gulf. It's to support them once they're in the Persian Gulf and they're going on flights within their range, and come back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We just don't have the feature sets to do all that necessarily yet. You can kind of rearm missiles, but not ammo. You can, do some minor repairs. You can't replace components, all the components yet. Yeah, there's a way to go. You can't refuel, but that's the intent. But sometimes it's going to be okay. Well, you're going to have to go back to a space station or a landing zone, and you're not going to be able to use a carrier-based carrier because the ship's too big for that, and that's not its role. Anyway, dynamic rain as the first step toward Genesis dynamic weather. What more dynamic? What's next? What's the next step? That's what I want to know. Aegis Idris P, adding the Idris Peacekeeper. A ship that secured our past and continues to define our future. This steadfast, tactical, civilian class incarnation of the UEN Darling is available to fly for the first time. It's great. It's definitely dated looking and has a lot of stuff to be added, but it's nice to finally have it in my hands. But it definitely is going to need a lot of updates as they continue to develop it. Greycat MTC, adding the MTC vehicle. Greycat's comprehensive suit and gun storage, defensive weaponry, and customary off-road ability. Great little adjunct vehicle. Great little mission support vehicle. Yeah, Genesis. But what's the next part of Genesis? Or the next part of Genesis dynamic weather. Mirai Guardian MX, adding the Mirai Guardian MX, keeping the cutting-edge design of its predecessor. The MX refines destruction to a powerful art. Enhanced weaponry and shields mean Mirai once again has put you ahead of every other single pilot flying. MISC Starlancer TAC, adding the Starlancer TAC ship designed for tactical assault and rescue. Rescue? Just because it has med beds? I think that's kind of a stretch, but okay. Anvil Asgard, introducing Anvil's new savior of the battlefield, the Asgard, a heavily armored vehicle dropship equipped for boundless resilience in the hottest combat zones. All right, that is the June 4th Roadmap Roundup. Let's get through the June 18th Roadmap Roundup from last week. Not going to read the preamble because we just read that on the previous one. Notable changes for June 18th. Release view 4.2. All 4.2 cards have been set to committed. So the Prowler utility set to committed. 4.2.1 Space Combat Mission Defend. Space Combat Mission Support Ship. Adding new missions focused around escorting ships that are under immediate threat. This has been updated to reflect the type of mission that will come in Alpha 4.2.1. So just changing the description. New global event. Adding a global cross-shard event that builds on collaboration and competition, set to tentative. Volt Laser Pistol Pulse, introducing a powerful new pistol from Volt's specialized arsenal. A high-capacity, fully automatic sidearm that ramps up its rate of fire as it heats up. I think the modifiers for the Volt weapons are pretty damn cool. I hope we see more stuff in terms of modifiers for weapons as part of their design in the future. It'll be interesting to see how creative they can get. Pardon me. New medium utility armor. The new medium utility armor has been temporarily removed. Boo. While we shift it to the Alpha 4.3 column. I'm assuming that's going to be the not July but August patch. It will reappear once the 4.3 column is populated. I'm interested to see what the medium utility armor it looks like and how it fits into the term utility. All right, we're gonna, now that we've wrapped up and caught up with the roadmap roundups in June, we're gonna go ahead and switch screens real quick. That way I have a little timestamp. Before we move on to the Spectrum pulls for the evening, why dropships? Will you guys let me know if when I do the screen transition, if it plays the soundbite that goes with the transition, or is that broken again? All right, and now let's see. We'll open up our dropships, close the roadmap roundup.
You never know what you're gonna find with big.
Inner Hype says you heard the okay, so the transition sound works. And you also hear the music. Unfortunately, I don't have it working, so that way the soundbite for the transition, animated transition, blocks out the music. But I'm hoping that the music being lower in volume, it just gets drowned out. All right, let's go ahead and switch back screens. Okay, so actually, I'm going to take a drink of water real quick. Thank you for the feedback, everyone. I appreciate it. Thanks for the help. Yeah, otherwise, I don't hear them. I have them turned off for me, because otherwise it's just way too loud in my ears. I can't adjust the volume for them on my side, but I can change it how it is for you guys. I don't know why that is. So like I said at the beginning of the show, I wanted to, if you're in my Discord, and Blizzrad's here, Northern Troopers here, a few other people that are regulars in the Discord, you know that everybody loves to heckle me about dropships. The M2 is the best dropship. Any ship is a dropship, or, blah, blah, blah. And I figured it was finally time to do a segment explaining why those things, every ship isn't a dropship. And why the M2 isn't a dropship. Because they are things that what defines a dropship, and why Star Citizen ascribes to the sort of traditional sci-fi, definition of what a dropship is because they are implementing tech and features within the game that bring very, very traditional sci-fi aspects of sci-fi and even real life physics and science into how dropships would work. And that's why it's dropships in the definition that CIG ascribes to is the more traditional and more science-based definition, in that a dropship is meant to carry personnel and cargo from a carrier ship in orbit to the surface and back, often in combat conditions, and it's meant to do it quickly. And so it's, they have to be the appropriate size to fit on a carrier. They have to be the appropriate size in order to do that job in a timely fashion. But they also have to be configured in a way, a shuttle does meet the definition of a dropship, but if dropships are generally ascribed more towards being landing craft, and so they have to be rugged to survive combat conditions. And they have to be configured in a way that makes tactical sense, which is why the dropships in Star Citizen are the way they are. So, one of the things that that people say when they ask, like, oh, well, why would anyone ever use a dropship? No one's ever going to be, no one's ever going to be grouping up with 20 other people, plus their crew in a Valkyrie to go take on a ground combat location. You never need, we're never going to have gameplay that requires that many people. No one's ever going to do any, want to group up with that many people. It's just for RPers. It's a niche thing, And the first aspect of that is the challenges with grouping up with people and getting into, creating pickup groups, so that way you're not having to coordinate ahead of time with your org in order to fill up a dropship, and that's the only time you ever bust out the Valkyrie and fill up all the seats is when you do a big org event. No, these are meant to be used regularly, not only as dropships but as transport for players and NPCs. But if you want to do it with players, we need to be able to have the ability to create a group on the fly in order to do larger scale events where you need that many people and you need that many seats. And so they just talked about this at CitizenCon last year. The last bit of Siege of Orison would have been a great place for dedicated dropships. And eventually we're going to have stuff like that where it makes sense. We're just not there yet. And we're going to talk about the stuff that's getting worked on now and in the future that will get us there. But the first bit is that social aspect. Well, I'm going to pause the music for a second so we can listen to Benoit talk about what they talked about at CitizenCon last year in regards to grouping up.
Bigger shards. I know I'm the bigger shards guy now, but we're going to have to find. That's cool, but as we navigate the verse, it's always very difficult to find people. We have a single channel. People are blasting looking for groups. It's a bit awkward. You never know what you're going to find. With bigger shards, I know I'm the bigger shards guy now, but we're going to have a lot more players in there. There must be a better way.
Well, Ben, we have given this some thought. So, the second tab in the social app, introducing the Party Finder. So, the Party Finder, it's a dynamic system that's going to make it easy for you to find interesting and engaging gameplay. It's basically player-powered matchmaking. So, if you are looking for more players, just go in here, advertise your party, give it an informative name like Ben has done here.
Space combat fun times.
And you could even set things like a specific contract that you want to play, or roles that you're looking to fill. Maybe you need gunners, engineers, pilots.
Meat shields.
Maybe that. You could also limit the number of members. You might want to do some, again, specific content. So you want to do with a set number of members in the party, or you might want a tight-knit group. That's something that I would like very much. Maybe you just don't want to split the contract rewards, right? So once you have that information, then it's time to list your party.
And then people are going to be applying to.
So, let's go ahead and turn the music back on. Here, I'll move this off screen so that way it doesn't, whoops. So that way it doesn't interfere with the video. So CIG is already talking about this, and there's a reason that Benoit was up there. This is a tech venture, and Benoit is the chief technical officer, but he mentioned bigger shards. Well, we in the last year we have gone from 100, a little over 100 plus player shards to 600 to 700 player shards. That is essentially the max capacity of a single replication layer to function, in terms of max number of connections. Because remember, everyone on the shard, all the players, as well as the servers in the shard, are all connected to that replication layer. So the replication layer has to be able to handle the transfer of data from players to servers and back, and servers to players. It's all moving through that replication layer. Well, with dynamic server meshing, which we just read that they're working on as part of the monthly report for May, with dynamic server meshing, that means that a shard is no longer a single replication layer, and is no longer limited to, is no longer bound by the population, the throughput limits, the connection limits of a single replication layer. If more people want to log into that shard, then more replicants will spin up in order to connect to those additional players and additional servers to simulate that greater player density and NPC density and entity density as the shard grows in player population. So, as an example right now, if we have one replication layer, one replicant managing Stanton and Pyro, and we've got 10 servers, I think it is the configuration, 5 and 5, 6 and 4, whatever. Well, you could very quickly go from a single replicant handling a single planetary system, a single replicant handling a single planet, a single replicant handling a single landing zone, and a handful of servers assigned to that replicant in order to simulate all the NPCs and all the players. And so we're looking with dynamic server meshing, even with just V1, at potentially a tenfold, maybe even more, increase in player count per shard, which is just nuts. Now, granted, that probably won't happen until we probably get our third system. Those two things will probably coincide. But if you can imagine having, even with dynamic server meshing V1, thousands of players across 3 systems, and having this new social system in order to find people and group up, as well as having, that many more replicants and that many more servers within a shard, and being able to have that many more servers simulating that many more NPCs, you can have much larger scale content with more players, with more NPCs, that requires a larger group to be able to do it. And so instead of doing a pickup group with just a few people from your Discord or a few people from your guild, your org, or a handful of people that you found in God forbid, the chat, we're gonna need this in order to be able to group up to do the content that is just random missions, because they're larger scale, they have more NPCs. You're not going to be able to run around with just soloing a bunker or doing a distribution center with you and 2 or 3 friends. You're going to need squads of people. You're going to need a lot more people to be able to do this larger scale content, and you won't always be able to rely on just your org. You're going to have to do pickup groups just like you did in any other MMO. That's what a dropship is for. A dropship is to move your pickup group to the dungeon, to the mission that you're going to go do that requires, a dozen plus people or something like that. And CIG has been planning this all along. The only problem is they started releasing dropships a couple years in advance of when they thought server meshing was going to be in and working. And here we are in 2025. So again, just like the Reclaimer coming out in advance of Salvage, the dropship, being meant to carry a whole bunch of people to content, came out long before we needed to carry a whole bunch of people to content. So that's the social aspect. Hold on, I need to pull up my notes. And so we also talked about server meshing.
But it's still going to cap.
So, this has been the idea for years. And this is why Chris Roberts was talking about this, server meshing back in 2018 as part of the plan. Guess what else released in 2018 at the CitizenCon? The fucking Valkyrie. This was all, again, this is all part of the plan. This has always been part of the plan. We just have taken a lot longer to get there than anyone ever thought would happen. But let's listen to what Chris said back in 2018 regarding what their ideas were for server meshing and player counts, in this context.
Experience, and this is our ability to go, right now we have about 50 players on a server. We probably will be able to increase that number because of band culling and stuff, but it's still going to cap out at a certain level. With server meshing, we'll be able to get to thousands of players playing concurrently in the same locations, star systems. They're not all going to be able to have 1,000 people dogpiling together. They won't be able to render it all at the same time, but you certainly will be able to have 1,000 people on the planet of Hurston, for instance. So the server meshing is the last key piece, because that will allow us to have a truly...
And this was before we even got to the version of server meshing that we have now, that they are working towards right now. This back in 2018, they weren't working with the replication layer model of server meshing. I won't go into that, but back then they didn't imagine they could do what they're getting ready to do in the near future with dynamic server meshing. They were already looking at, we could probably easily do 1,000 people on a planet. With what we have going forward, you can have thousands of people on a planet. In a single area, you could have essentially a single replication layer handling a large area around like a distribution center with hundreds of players. At least dozens, if not hundreds of players, all in a battlefield-sized map with lots and lots of NPCs and stuff going on, because it's all on a single replication layer, which is literally in the same stack as the servers doing the simulation, and that's why we can do this without any sort of loss. Now it's going to take a lot of work to a lot more work to get there, and a lot of optimizations, and they have to obviously work on the rendering aspect, which we know about Vulkan, but that's where we're at, and that's how we get to the point where we need dropships to bring lots of people to larger scale content. That's why in the lore for the Valkyrie, they specifically mention the Valkyrie hasn't been used for the large scale invasions that it was designed for. It hasn't yet been used for large scale invasions it was designed for. What do you think is going to happen? We're going to be dropping players and NPCs onto Virgil to retake Virgil or something like that. It's that dropping players and NPCs onto Charon or the planets in the Nexus system, to fight back pirates and rebels, and we're already working our way there. Like they're already pushing player caps, pushing the limits of what's stable and performant on a single replicant. The shards. Over 600 players, pushing over 700 players. It's very variable, and so they're testing it right now to see where those pressure points are. So the next aspect of notes. The next aspect of what makes dropships important, what makes them necessary, is right now. Pardon me. Sorry. Right now, your suit has not unlimited, but it takes a long time to run out of air in your suit if you're in vacuum or a hostile atmosphere. And life support isn't a thing on ships, and life support isn't even going to be in the first iteration of engineering. But a dropship, one of the things they've talked about for dropships is that dropships will have sufficient life support, dropships, but also people transport ships. Your Genesis Starliner, they have to have sufficient life support to support the number of people who are designed to be on board. And so right now you can dogpile in any ship, and everybody just lies down on the floor, and hominis nominus, you have a dropship. Well, in the future, that won't be a thing. You won't be able to, because your suit, eventually your suit, and I meant to find the quote for this from Richard Tyrer. This is from CitizenCon 2020. But they talked about how eventually your suit, your armor will have resource network built into it as well. And so if it's a vacuum rated suit, it will consume air, and you'll have to refill that air in some way, shape, or form. It will use power, and you'll have to have batteries. Different modules that you attach onto your suit will utilize different resources based off what they do. But so you won't be able to just dogpile everyone into a Pisces and lie flat on the ground, and everybody, because you won't have the life support, and you won't be able to, even if you did rely on your suits, everybody's wearing a vacuum rated suit. Well, now while you're on your way to the target, you are consuming the suit resources that you would need while you are on the target, while you're doing the mission. And you're consuming it while en route. And so it's like, yeah, that's a choice, but a dropship is meant to get you there and provide the atmosphere within the ship, so that way you're not consuming those suit resources if you're going to a hostile atmosphere. There's no atmosphere. It's a hostile atmosphere. Your suit's ability to generate heat to keep you warm, that will run off your batteries. So if you are in a colder environment, and the ship you're on isn't able to maintain enough warmth because the life support isn't there to keep people warm or cool or comfortable or everything, that will all play into how dropships are meant to work. But that's a confirmed thing, is part of the life support aspect of dropships and being able to support the people on it. Did talk about how ship engineering and hacking go hand in hand at our Bar Citizen. Yeah, I think that's part of why they're working on hacking right now, and why it was probably delayed. And this is just me spitballing, but I think because hacking has to interact with components and engineering. If we didn't have those things in, what would be there to hack? Or would they have to refactor hacking in order to get after engineering came in? So it sucks, but it makes sense now that engineering is finally coming along. We're seeing them finally work on hacking that, okay, it isn't just hacking a door so you can board the ship. It's no, you want to hack to disable. You got to hack to interfere. You talked about it, non-kinetic PvP, or even non-kinetic PvE. That's part of hacking. But so life support is a significant aspect of what makes a dropship, is it has to be able to support the life that's on board. And if your ship isn't ready to do that, isn't capable of supporting, the dozen, people, the 20 people you've got on board, it's not going to be able to do that function. It's not going to be able to function as a dropship. And that's part of what dropships are designed to do. And they have said that the dropships will have sufficient life support to do that, along with ships like the Genesis and the E1 and future ships that do people transport. So the next thing on the list is the gravity generators. So when they implemented the force reactions, so you're flying your Valkyrie, you're flying any ship, and you've got people walking about, and you do a sudden maneuver, and it throws people onto the ground. That's the first iteration of force reactions. That is not the end state. And so Jared and John Crew just talked about this recently, and again, this is something that they're working on right now. And gravity generation, it isn't the first, I don't think it's included in the first part of engineering, but we're going to be seeing it essentially as engineering rolls out over the next year or so. And they're going to be implementing it how John Crew described. And then you won't be able to just not only clown car people because of the lack of life support, but you won't be able to clown car people because they won't be able to lie down on the ground to avoid the issues of force reactions. So let's see what John had to
currently,
say. Here, we're gonna rewind 5 seconds, and I'll pause the music. Actually, give me one. Here, we're gonna let him. Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna use the bathroom. I gotta take a bathroom break. Okay, I'm back. All hail the mighty chair. Did you guys see? This is my new chair. I got a refurbished Herman Miller, right? Oh gosh. The really nice ergonomic office chairs. Bets on him returning with ice cream. There's no ice cream. Yeah, sorry, not today. I really wish I had some. I literally just finished the last slice of my Father's Day cake last night. I've been slowly working my way through that. All hail chair. Yeah. And no joke, it is ridiculously comfortable. I bought myself the cake. So, and the only reason I bought the cake is because the twins' birthday was on the 11th. And so I was walking by the bakery while I was getting groceries with Boone, and there's a sign on top of the bakery case that said baby's first birthday cake free with purchase of 8-inch cake. And I was like, oh, well, I could get a first birthday cake free for the kids, so that way the babies could have their little smash cake, you know? It's one of the little like I don't know, it's like a 4 or 6-inch cake or whatever. And I was like, okay, so if all I have to do is buy a cake to get them their first birthday cake, yeah, you happily jumped on that diabetes sword. Oh yeah, I flying leap onto it, and of course the Father's Day cake is conveniently positioned right next to the baby's first birthday cake, and I was like, well, that's a sign. I can take a hint. So I bought a Father's Day cake, and I got them to give me 2 baby's first birthday cakes because I showed them pictures of my twins. I was like, hey, it doesn't say only one. It says baby's first birthday cake free. And I was like, I've got 2 babies having their first birthday. And they're like, okay, fine. They're cute. And so they gave me the cakes for the twins for free with the purchase of my Father's Day cake. So the babies got to have their smash cake, and I had a Father's Day cake. And of course, like, you know, it wasn't a very big cake, but, you know, like my wife and our au pair had a slice with me the first night, and after that they didn't have any more, and so I had to eat the other half of this cake by myself, and it's taken me, you know, a week or whatever it's been to get through it all because I don't, I didn't want to die of diabetes sweats. All right, let's listen to what John has to say about gravity generators and such.
Before you go to China.
Currently, marine seats on ships feel underutilized. Will they have unique functions in the future?
Assuming this is
Drop seats.
Drop seats. Yes, they sort of do already, but it's sort of underutilized or unnoticed feature in that we do impart G-forces onto loose actors within ships. So for drop ships, if you have 20 people crammed in the back of a Valkyrie and the pilot does a hard turn, you're all ragdolling and falling over. It doesn't happen really as much as we want or the way we want it. It's very binary at the moment, like big impulse happens, everyone falls over. Whereas the way Chris has talked to me about it is your gravity generator on ships, which is not yet a physicalized item but will be, sort of lags in its compensation of gravity. So rather than it being too much gravity, everyone fall over, it's hard turn, gravity's failing, everything starts getting loose, and if it continues, then people start not necessarily falling over, but almost like EVAing inside the ship because the gravity cannot keep up with the force and the directions. So then, being sat in the seats, you're not having to deal with any of that. But the counter of that is we want to make dropships be more utilized. At the moment, they're probably not tanky enough to, they don't have enough health to survive the drop-in versus other ships. So we've got to bump that up to get people using them.
Dropships are literally the living manifestation of putting all your eggs in one basket.
They need to survive the drop for people to bother using them. So it's a sort of cyclical thing.
The Zeus's design is...
So he touched on two things. We're going to touch on the armor and survivability part towards the end here. Pardon me. But so with the way that they want gravity generators to work is if you are overcoming, with your maneuvers and stuff, if you're overcoming the gravity generator's ability to, essentially create a normal downward 1G, then your people will float up in the air, your people will be pushed down onto the ground, your people can be thrown, and they have talked about how they want those. I've never had it happen to me. I don't think it's in, but they want the what they just talked about. They want that to be able to cause injuries, and so not only will the drop seats prevent you from keep you seated down, and you're not going to get thrown all over the place and thus not injured. The other thing that they will do is they won't import. If you're in the drop seat, you have the G-force mitigation. You have essentially the internal dampening, just like a pilot seat does. And
will even allow the player to conceal.
The other aspect of drop seats is, so they're going to essentially require you to be in those seats when you're making a hot drop. And I'm going to explain why you're going to need to be in those seats, because everybody's going to be like, well, I just will fly more gently, fly more slowly. Well, that's not what dropships are supposed to do. They need to survive the drop. Part of that is being more survivable. Part of that is you need to get to the target quickly, and you need to have your approach be as fast and
part of the crew, part of the ship.
Hey, Sergeant Obstack, thanks for the follow. Thanks for coming and hanging out.
Part of the crew, part of the ship.
So if you can imagine you are approaching a target. And if you're approaching at full speed, but then in order to not overshoot the target, you have to start braking in order to not overshoot it. Well, as you're braking, you are moving more and more slowly. You're more and more of an easy target during that braking period. That's not a good thing. You don't want to be an easy target. With helicopters, in order to do this, we use aerodynamic braking. and I'm not going to explain how that works, but essentially it's allowing, making the helicopter less aerodynamic, so that way it slows itself down without having to use as much of the rotor speed to do it. And so that what the dropships are designed to do, and I'll explain why all of them are designed to do this, is be able to brake really fast. So that way that period of you decelerating as you approach the target is as short as possible. So you have to spend as much time at top speed and maneuverability on your way to the target as possible to shorten that window of vulnerability, or make you as limit your vulnerable period as much as possible. And part of that is tech that has already been worked on. But the other part of drop seats, if you're going to be forced into drop seats, well, what if you have to be able, you don't want to have to, you have to be able to wear the gear that you want to wear, so that way you can hop right out, get into the action. And that's the other part of jump ships or drop ships, is those drop seats need to allow for that. And let's see, I think I got the right timestamp. Hey, Sergeant OPSEC, I am a civilian flight paramedic as well as a Army National Guard flight paramedic. I'm literally actually going flying tomorrow. We have a new rescue piece of rescue equipment. I don't know anything about it. This is the first time hearing it. That's we are purchasing, and so we're getting training on it tomorrow. I have never been in the situation where we had to auto rotate. We have to train on it, and so I've auto rotated more times than I can count. I do not like it. I know the pilots can think it's kind of fun being in the backseater. It's like a roller coaster, and I do not like that feeling. I do not like it. Sam, I am. I think I got the right timestamp. Let's see if this is the right timestamp. We'll let it play for a minute.
Smaller weapons from security, should the need arise. Another new addition we're going to be introducing is flight penalties based on the mass and size of your armor and clothing. You'll still be able to fly in medium and heavy armor, but you're restricting the precision of your control. If you're in clothes like our leader is here, or a flight suit or light armor, you'll be able to fly unrestricted. Now, if we look at an overview, we've cherry-picked 6 generalized stats to give you like a high-level understanding of how various clothing and armors we specialized. This is by no means a comprehensive. The leader has obvious reasons. Members.
Did I get the wrong timestamp? Oh, I think I grabbed this timestamp because I wanted to talk about how, so they're based off the seat that you're in. And again, we just talked about why you're going to need to be in a seat. The seat will determine what you can wear. They'll have penalties and such. And so, obviously if you are flying a ship, you're going to want to be in a flight suit or not or not in armor at all, and just clothes in order to not have those penalties. And so not every seat is going to offer the same benefits. The drop seats are going to offer that internal dampening of G forces, just like a pilot seat offers you in being in a flight suit. And they also will allow you to have that while wearing up to potentially heavy armor. It's something that they're still discussing. The last mention I found of it was in regarding to from the Legionnaire, for the Q&A Legionnaire, but they asked what equipment can be transported by the boarding team. For example, can it carry heavy weapons, and can heavy armor be worn in the jump seats? There is space on board to store heavy special weapons and heavy armor. We are working with the core gameplay pillar to ensure that if heavy armor cannot be worn in the seats, as not all seats will have this restriction. So the restriction isn't going to be there, but you'll be able to wear, pretty much wear that heavy armor. But being in a jump seat or a drop seat, a jump seat and a jump seat in a drop ship, jump seat in a drop ship, you will have the benefits of those those seats while wearing combat armor versus if you're in a seat that isn't for that. If you look at the seats in the Valkyrie and then you look at the seats in the back of the Cutlass Black or some of those other fold down seats in other places, those won't offer those same benefits. You will still have those G-forces, and we'll see why we're going to learn more about why those G-forces are important, because it isn't just the maneuvers that you're doing, getting thrown around and falling down. Is you don't want to come to the landing zone and be blacked out because the ship rapidly braked and did some maneuvers in order to shorten that time where you're vulnerable. So we're going to look at some lore, because lore equals gameplay, and there's a few bits of lore that connect together that paint a picture regarding dropships and regarding jump seats that is cohesive over several years. And it's something that they've stuck to. So this is called the Untold Tales, the Unexpected Guests. And this is serialized Star Citizen lore. So in this part of the passage, though many outside of the Marines, the UE Marines, have heard of the nail, few have seen it in action. UPark, which is like DARPA for the UE scientists, are believed to have reverse engineered the tech from the feared Vandal boarding spikes, which is the boarding torpedo. You see it. Switch to autopasta. What do you mean, autopasta? The spikes, the cleavers, are the boarding torpedoes that you see. We saw in the Squadron 42 demo. It's literally a torpedo that they shoot at a ship, and it goes as fast as a torpedo and slams into and cuts a hole into the side of the ship. And so you can imagine the G-forces imparted on the occupant of that boarding torpedo when it's flying as fast as a torpedo and slams into a ship. You have to have internal dampening tech in order to mitigate those G-forces. Believed to have reverse engineered the tech from the feared Vandal boarding spikes used in ship-to-ship combat, modifying the design to make it viable for a human occupant. The current nail can safely deploy a Marine from a ship in space to a planet surface in 90 seconds. This device is a technological marvel if correctly deployed, and a metal coffin if not. Oh, no worries, Victoria, you're good. So, the nails use this G-force, inertial dampening tech that we apparently acquired from the Vandal that they use in their boarding torpedoes to allow for drop pods, UE Marine nail drop pods, to come screaming out of the sky and slam into the ground and not turn you into paste. Now, if you read more about said nails, this is from the jump point regarding UE Marines. It was this one. So unlike other UE forces, Marines do not deploy indiscriminately. A Marine is either stationed on Corrin for training or he is actively engaged in a combat operation. Marines do not protect convoys, interdict pirates, or garrison jump points. They invade planets, strike back at the Vandal, and personally protect the Imperator. The most famed specialty of the Marines is space-to-surface landing operations. Marine shock troopers can drop from the sky in specially constructed individual rocket pods known as nails. Featuring the same internal dampener as a Hornet, a nail can deliver a trooper from the dropship to a specifically targeted location on a planet surface within 90 seconds. So the fighters, that's why we're able to experience high G-forces in our fighters, is because they have... and obviously we don't have the same military version, but it's the same tech, just civilianized, as the Hornet. So the same tech, the same inertial dampeners that we got from the Vandal cleavers are used in the nails. They're also used in military Hornets and other fighters. And if we go on to read the jump point for the Legionnaire, and if you remember when the Legionnaire came out, tree in the middle of the night. Yeah, well, I mean, it's 11 o'clock my time. I got started a little bit late. because getting the kids down. So in this paragraph right here, the reason for the secrecy under which the rest of the Legionnaires' development was conducted has officially remained classified, although third-party reports suggest it was because the Navy unexpectedly made available a partially complete Vandal Cleaver boarding ship for the team at Anvil to examine during the development process. Anvil corporate and military public relations sources continue to deny this, stating that the Legionnaire is a completely human engineering effort. So the Vandal Cleaver boarding ship, which is they're talking about the boarding torpedo, which has the inertial dampening tech. Well, why would the Legionnaire need that inertial dampening tech? It's because the Legionnaire the UE model of the Legionnaire has also become celebrated for a flight maneuver that has become the goal of its top pilots, called the KISS. This crowd-pleasing maneuver involves two Legionnaires that approach each other seemingly at full speed. Full speed, playing essentially chicken, full speed head-to-head, carefully maneuvering so that they stop with their boarding collars touching front to front. So they're coming at each other full speed and then rapidly braking in order to just barely kiss and stop and touch their docking collars, their boarding collars. So they go from full speed to rapid deceleration to just kiss. That's why it's called the KISS maneuver. Well, in order to do that, you'd A, need big time deceleration, hello VTOLs, but B, in order for the pilot, the crew, as well as the boarding team to not black out during the maneuver, they need the Vandal inertial dampening tech that's in the nails, that's in our best fighters. And it would be in, for the pilots and for the people in the jump seats. So that way they don't black out. Okay, well, we're connected, and all the boarders are snoozing away because they blacked out from the G-forces. In jump seats, just like in dropships, which essentially the Legionnaire is. What does the Legionnaire have that the Valkyrie also has? 4 rotating VTOLs. So, Mike Tyson, now Kith. So we've determined that we're going to have the ability to much more easily get together in much larger groups to take on much larger and more complex content requiring bigger groups, which will need to be transported by dropships. You won't be able to clown car by lying down on the ground. You won't have enough life support if you're not using a dropship. If you're not sitting in the jump seats, you won't get thrown around and injured due to the lack of inertial dampening and G-force mitigation from the gravity generators, failing during maneuvers. But during your rapid deceleration as you approach to target, well, how's that going to be possible? Right now, dropships like the Valkyrie, you can either have VTOLs down or backwards. That is not the intent. They are working on the tech to make it so that way they can rotate dynamically in order to do that rapid braking that they need for the Legionnaire to do the KISS maneuver. So, let's see. Did I grab the wrong?
My favorite thing about the Mirai Fury.
So, that tech is called blend space tech, and it was developed for the Santakai as well as for the Mirai Fury. And so that tech is already in. It just isn't, the flight model isn't developed to the point where they are going to continue to work on that tech to expand it onto the other ships. It doesn't have a star on the names. I'm pressing X to doubt. No joke. Good to see you, Dibley. So, and I forget this dev's actual name, which one this is. But so a player made this post back in 2023, about 2 years ago. Aren't a lot of ships' engines supposed to rotate for VTOL and or maneuvering? So they show it in this clip for the cutter. It was in the Terrapin commercial, the Valkyrie commercial, old legacy ships for the Freelancer. So aren't the engines on the Freelancer, Vulture, Constellation, Caterpillar, etc. supposed to rotate for VTOL maneuvering? They look like they're supposed to, and the Mist commercial even shows it doing so. The cutter, whose thrusters do rotate in a Code of ISE, specifically states that the cutter uses the Vulture's VTOLs, which don't V. I get that things change with time, but especially for the Vulture, it feels like a ship that will definitely be spending a lot of time hovering around crash sites should have the extra boost that downward-facing primary thrusters would provide. So let's learn more about this tech. We're in the beginning stages of developing the blend space tech that will allow the motion of the ships to drive rotations in the ship's skeleton. So the thrusters are part of that ship's skeleton. The VTOLs on the Terrapin, the VTOLs on the Valkyrie, for example. While intended for the new Santok Eye, organic B-Space animations may come in a future release as an update, as key tech art and engineering resources are limited but determined. I hope to fulfill Long Hill goals with the Xi'an Scout to have it move more squid-like and the hover bikes to have articulated nacelles. Once the B-Space tech, blend space tech, is stable, we'll roll it out to various other ships where it makes sense. I've always wanted VTOLs to move like that landing scene in Prometheus. And so here, we can watch that really quick just for fun.
What is the atmosphere?
Atmosphere, 71% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, traces of argon gas.
Whoa, now that's weather.
Just like home.
Only if you're breathing through an exhaust pipe. CO2's over 3%. 2 minutes without a suit, you're dead. Peak, port side. Whoa, 52,000. Makes Everest look like a baby brother.
All right, take us round. Gonna use that as our point of entry.
Terrain data resing up. We've got a couple of hard spots. Could be metal.
No radio, no heat source.
Nobody's home. There is nothing in the desert, and no man needs nothing.
What was that?
Just something from a film I like.
Let's go through that gateway. Juice, airspeed by 100 knots. Going through. Nice and slow. Keep it steady, boys. There.
No, what are you doing?
Dr. Holloway, why don't you take a seat?
Right there. God does not build in straight lines. Starboard side, this valley. Captain, do you think you can put us down there?
Yeah, it wouldn't be any good if I couldn't do that. Mr. Ravel, start at 90 degrees. One mile port bow.
1 mile port bow.
Engage landing sequence. Switch to manual.
Commence landing.
Easy does it.
Roger that.
Yeah, baby, yeah. Bringing it down in 5.
Preparing to fire RCS.
4. 2. Easy does it.
There's a monster in your chest.
So you guys saw how the VTOLs, they rotated forward as they are decelerating in order to use the VTOL thrust to slow them down while still generating upward lift. So they say Caterpillar engines will not ever rotate, though. Boo. The Caterpillar engines should rotate, and they should put rotating VTOLs on the front of them as well. Freelancer looked crazy, so we nixed the 360-degree flips in the commercial, but since the geometry would support it, I would raise the possibility to re-add some motion back in with B-Space, maybe, but more design call. Various ships that already have rotating VTOLs should then be made to vector while maneuvering, such as the Idris, Reclaimer, Terrapin, and Mole, and several more, like the Valkyrie. So when they say vector, they're talking about what he just showed off is they don't just, you press a button and they rotate down to generate straight downward thrust. But as you are telling the ship to slow down, they will rotate into position in order to provide more lift as you're slowing, but then also provide retro thrust to slow you down. Well, what does that mean for a dropship? That's what the KISS maneuver is you're flying, with VTOLs facing straight back, providing max thrust until the last point you need where you apply essentially space brake. And the VTOLs, if you apply max space brake and the VTOLs swing around and they apply max retro thrust in order to slow you down as much as possible in the shortest distance possible. That's what the KISS maneuver is. That's what dropships need to be able to do is you're flying your Valkyrie at the target. You see the landing zone. You're taking fire. You need to get on the ground as fast as possible without you don't want to have this long, slow deceleration burn because you're letting the retro thrusters on the front of the ship do all the work. No, you got to flip those VTOLs around to do what is in essence a KISS maneuver, but for a Valkyrie, or a Cutlass Black, or even a Prowler, any of the dropships like that. The Cutter will get VTOLs like that, but the Cutter only has 2. This is why the Valkyrie has 4. This is why the Legionnaire has 4. This is it's not so much for maneuverability; it's to be able to rotate and provide max full, rearward thrust in order to, rapidly brake you to allow the inertial dampener tech that we got from the Van Duel that's in the jump seats or drop seats to keep your people from feeling the G-forces. So as soon as you hit the ground, they didn't black out, from 20 Gs, and you're like, okay, you guys can get out now. And they're all still doing that whole deal. That's what this is about. So, and we learn more about this tech in the ISC Get Furious. It's the same tech that's in here. This is part of the ship skeleton that animates based off of the inputs and changes dynamically. So let's read this. Listen to this little clip.
Wouldn't have fit in as many ships as it can. It's more maneuverable. It's faster. It's more heavily armed. It's got everything going for it.
My favorite thing about the Mara Fury is definitely the thrusters.
We've managed to get fully 180-degree rotating main thrusters, meaning that we don't have specific retros. This also means that it's got much more efficiency when it comes to turning and strafing and all sorts of flight maneuvers, because it can put its main thrust in pretty much whichever direction it needs to go. They are...
That's the tech. That's what he's talking about. So these can rotate, on their spindles and everything. Well, the ones on the Valkyrie, I don't think they're going to necessarily do the fine animations that you saw in here. Where is it? Hold on. No. Hold on, I've got the... Let me pull up the Terrapin one from the Terrapin commercial really quick. It's trash day. Where is it? I know I have it somewhere. Didn't I just download it? Or maybe I just downloaded it on my laptop. Maybe that's why. Anyway, if you remember the Terrapin commercial, they vectored outward as well and articulated. But I don't know if the Valkyries will end up doing that. But what they talked about, they just said they don't have specific retro thrusters. So when you brake to slow down the ship, these spin all the way around and put thrust forward to brake, to provide braking. Well, right now, ships, all ships have retro thrusters in order to brake their forward momentum, unless you spin around and face the other direction and do essentially a retro burn. With the tech that they've built for the Santaki Eye and for the Fury, etc., that same tech is what will be used on the Valkyrie to do what he was just talking about, where the Valkyrie thrusters won't just rotate into downward facing. They'd be able to swing forward and rapidly apply retro thrust to brake, to provide braking, really, really, really fast. That would apply a lot of G's, but also that's how you make it so you don't have this long period where you're super vulnerable. That's how you do that KISS maneuver that the Legionnaire is talking about. That's what necessitates you needing the inertial dampening in the drop seats, and you having to sit in those is because you'll get thrown across. You'll be thrown against the bulkhead, and you'll black out, and you'll be useless once you hit the ground if you're not sitting in those things. That's why you need a dropship in order to get through that enemy anti-aircraft fire. To rapidly get down to the landing zone while there's fighters trying to shoot you down and such. You have to be able to do that quickly. And if your people on the, who are hitting the ground running can't hit the ground running because they're blacked out, well, then you're up a creek. So that's part of this whole recipe of everything that they need to implement in order to necessitate the use of dropships to be used in game. To give dropships the value of that we've always jokingly called the dropship tax. Well, it's the dropship tax is important. The reason you pay this much for the dropship is because no other ship can do these things. There's only a handful of true dropships, and there's no other ships that are designed to do this. And if you don't have these things, well, then you can't rapidly brake on approach to the target, and you're much more vulnerable. You won't have the life support that you need to carry a whole bunch of people to get to the mission. You might have to make multiple trips, or have a bunch of people take ships that aren't needed for it, and it's not as efficient. The other aspect is, and we're about to get into that, but I wanted to play the clip from the flight model talking about the changes to the flight model. What if we just pack 130 guys in there so you can get thrown around? Yeah, you can get thrown around and everything, but you're not going to be able to do a hot drop in a ship that can't do a hot drop. If you can't rapidly brake, in that ship because all you have is retro thrusters and you don't have VTOLs that rotate to do retro braking, well, then you're going to have to do this slow deceleration. That leaves you super vulnerable to getting shot down. It's why the M2 isn't a dropship. It's why the Starlancer TAC isn't a dropship, because you don't have VTOLs that rotate into forward position to allow for rapid deceleration, along with them just being huge ships, a lot of mass that you have to slow down. You have to do this much slower deceleration that leaves you really vulnerable to getting shot, and you don't have to get exploded. You just have to get damaged, so that way you can't make the landing. The ships that don't have the life support for carrying a whole bunch of people aren't drop ships. Ships that don't have the drop seats to mitigate those those G forces aren't drop ships. It's why that's necessary. So let's watch this part of the atmospheric flight model where they talk about transitioning to hovering, and how it dynamically tells the thrusters to do what they need to do to maintain that hover. this tech, along with this blend space tech, and we just read about in the monthly report in May how they reached a major milestone in the atmospheric flight model, how these transitions are more smooth and dynamic and realistic, blah, blah, blah. This advancing is why this can get implemented to allow for ships like the Valkyrie to do what they're intended to do. We're not there yet, but we are getting there.
IFCS will help you. So you're going to bring down the speed, disconnect, purposefully put the ship into a stall. But don't worry, when we don't have the thrusters disconnected, IFCS will help you. So you're going to bring down the speed more and more until you're reaching stall speed, which is about now. And then the thrusters will kick in and catch you. That means, however, you are now in a state that the thrusters don't.
So in this instance, just like happened in that Prometheus thing, if you are braking with those VTOLs and you're slowing down your main thrusters, which are your main thrusters are VTOLs on the Valkyrie. I'm just using the Valkyrie as an example. They will rotate like this in order to generate enough lift at slow enough speed, and then eventually, if you apply enough brake, they'll rotate down enough and around, so that way they're facing forward to brake as much as you need in order to to slow you down as much as you want to slow down. And so if you're only braking a little bit and you want to come in at a more gentle approach, you're not doing a hot drop, they come in at like this angle. But if you need to slow down in a hurry, it rapidly brakes and then transitions backward, as you come down to the ground. Danger Hobo says, I was just thinking of the whole platoon in the CH-53 A debris. Yep, no, I've been there. But a CH-53 obviously can't do the types of maneuvers that a Blackhawk can, or a Huey, because it's big and fat and slow, which is kind of the difference between like a Valkyrie and an M2. It's like, yeah, they can both still hover, they can both still land like that, but one's going to have to do it a lot more slowly and carefully because it's a big fat walrus, compared to the other.
Right? So at the moment we have turned this up, but in the future you will not be able to hold this for long. So if Brent, for example, now from a hover, strafe is...
Like they talked about that, you won't be able to hold the hover for long because they are hovering with maneuvering thrusters, which are meant for short bursts and overheat quickly. Whereas if you come to a stop like this with your ship with VTOLs, maybe it's the Reclaimer, maybe it's even the Idris, they'll be able to hold that hover a lot longer. Not indefinitely, but a lot longer. But you have to think about your thrust to mass ratio. Having VTOL thrusters on an Idris just means that it can actually land. It doesn't mean that it can sit at a hover. It means it can actually land. So thrust to mass ratio doesn't go out the window. That's why your thrust to mass ratio is so good on a ship like the Valkyrie, because it has to be able to brake really hard, but it also needs to be able to fly slowly at a near hover when it's doing like ground support type stuff, ground attack, ground support. Oh, dang it! I lost the timestamp on this one. No. Hold on. Okay, there it is. All right, so we talked about the flight model. We talked about, we talked about the social system for grouping up with people in order to get the larger groups to do content. In order to get enough people, rather than just have to get a whole bunch of org mates or something like that, to be able to dynamically and quickly get a whole bunch of people to fill up your dropship. We talked about server meshing, which is going to allow for much, dynamic server meshing is going to allow for much even larger, far larger than what we have right now, shard player counts, but also far larger NPC counts. at locations in order to have much larger scale content. That's going to require more people, to the point where you need a dropship, you need a whole squad and then some. We talked about how you're going to need sufficient life support, and that's what dropships are for, because you won't be able to rely on your suit air, and you don't want to be using up your suit air if you're going to a hospital environment. So that's life support. We talked about how the gravity generators are meant to fail, and you will be, not just thrown around. You won't be able to mitigate getting thrown around by lying down on the floor. When the gravity generator is unable to compensate anymore, you'll get thrown around whether you're lying around on the floor, but you'll also black out, just like if you're the pilot. And in order to not have that happen, you'll have to be in a drop seat that you have in dropships, or jump seat like in dropships. If you'll have to sit in those seats if you want to wear, full combat armor and be able to quickly get out and wear get in the fray. We talked about how that inertial dampening tech is in the Legionnaire, and that's why it's in the drop seats in the Legionnaire for the KISS maneuver. It's why it's in the Valkyrie for doing the same thing, because they all have rotating VTOLs, and the tech for VTOLs has already been developed for VTOLs to rotate into the forward position to apply retro braking to allow for that KISS maneuver. It's already been developed, and as the flight model continues to develop, they will expand that onto the ships like the Valkyrie, the Terrapin, and such, where appropriate, so that way it can do the things like we've seen in the commercials. Now, the last thing, and John Crew alluded to it when he talked about after he talked about the gravity generators, is survivability. Dropships need to be able to survive to get down to the target to do what they're intended to do. And right now, because we don't really have armor, it's faked. Dropships really can't be that any more survivable other than just increasing the health pool, and that has its own set of issues. Well, that's what Maelstrom is for. Maelstrom, that we learned about, is a material simulation. And so what they can do with Maelstrom is specify which ships have heavy armor, and the materials that the ships are made out of will be much more resistance to penetration and breaking up due to that heavy armor. And other ships won't have that. They won't have that heavy armor. They won't have that resistance to penetration and durability in terms of not breaking up and falling apart. And that will probably make them heavier, which is why they need the thrusters to be able to rotate forward to be able to slow them down when they're doing those hard deceleration burns on the approach to target. So let's listen to a little bit about Maelstrom, and we'll see how that applies to the actual dropships that we know about.
To achieve all this, we gave each physical geometry instance an identifier to be able to uniquely identify it within the universe. So your Gladius wing is your Gladius wing. We added physical material and damage properties that can now be replicated across the network. One of them, and that's the most important one, we call integrity. And this determines how much structural or internal integrity a physical geometry has. Integrity is modified from dissipating, or rather absorbing, energy from kinetic impacts or energy weapons, and also in the future from absorbing energy from external factors like extreme temperature or fire, as you've seen before. We also track which physical part or geometry belongs to which visual geometry and which high-level entity. So
not only will your dropships, which are meant to be heavily armored, be resistant to, have the resistance to energy weapons and penetration from ballistics and stuff, making them much more rugged than other ships that, so again, if you bring in this ship and, you're using the wrong ship for the job, you've clown carred a bunch of people into a freelancer, or maybe, I don't know, a Starfarer or something. So you don't have rotating VTOLs. You have this, you don't have actual, marine style drop seats. And so you have to do this slow deceleration burn using your retro thrusters. You're super vulnerable. You can't do these hard maneuvers because all your people will, fall over and black out. And you're getting shot this entire time. You might get shot down. You might get damaged to the point where you can't, go to a hover and make the landing. You don't have the armor to protect you. The durability. Maybe you're flying through atmosphere. They talked about other stressors and stuff. If you're flying through a really bad storm, the durability of a Valkyrie or the Prowler might make it more resistant to damage from getting thrown about in severe turbulence. That could be a thing. But he talked about how the Maelstrom, and the integrity and the resistances, and the material simulation that gives it these properties. And this is what's going to be the heavy armor that dropships need that John Crew talked about to give it decipherability. Well, what? Oh, we're going to wait for it to come back around because it restarted. Every dropship has been said to be heavily armored. Every single one. And there we go. So the Cutlass Steel that everybody loves to joke about. Okay, it's still a dropship. Armor. When shields aren't quite enough, mil-spec armor keeps your personnel safe and sound. There it is. So it just, all this means is that the Cutlass Steel, the material that the Cutlass Steel, and there's a reason it looks like this, the material of the Cutlass Steel will have more integrity, more resistance, have more durable properties than the Cutlass Black or even the Cutlass Red. That's all that means. Here, we'll pull up the... this is the Valkyrie brochure, and it's actually the brochure from 2018 CitizenCon, which included the Valkyrie brochure because that's when it was released. So... heavy armor all around and built-in countermeasures complete the Valkyrie's formidable offensive-defensive package. Armor, heavy. The Prowler. Let's see. It's... where was it? There we go. If it does attract hostile attention, the Prowler is equipped with not only heavy armor, but utilizes the phalanx shield tech. So, Prowler, dropship, heavy shield tech, or heavy armor. If you go to the Anvil Asgard transmission, the Asgard is a dropship. It's just meant for moving vehicles and cargo and not people. Heavy armor. The Prowler utility is a variant of the Prowler. It's still heavily armored. They just talked about how they made changes in the patch notes to the Prowler as well as the Prowler utility to give it the durability that they want it to have as a dropship. The Legionnaire is meant to be heavily armored. It's not a dropship, it's a boarding ship, but it functions in it has the same feature set, being that it has the rotating VTOLs, it has jump seats. It's baby's first dropship. So that's why, in a nutshell, all of these things that we just talked about are what makes a dropship, and why dropships have a very specific role in Star Citizen, one that hasn't really been realized up until not now, but in the near future. It's going to be necessary. It isn't just going to be RP and looks cool. It's going to be, you need to be in those jump seats. You need to be in a dropship. Otherwise you aren't going to be able to do that more difficult content, that larger scale content that necessitates the use of a dropship. That's the whole premise behind the Valkyrie, is these larger scale landings. And whether it's one Valkyrie with 20 people or multiple Valkyries where you're going in with a whole bunch of NPCs, the sky's the limit for CIG. But it's why they have made dropships. It's why they've made dropships expensive. It's because they have a plan. Unfortunately, that plan is complicated and multifactorial and has taken a long time to develop, but we are getting really close. And for me, being the Valkyrie is my favorite ship. I want to be a dropship pilot. I'm very excited to see all these things come together and for it to finally work as advertised. And before I let you go, I think we should probably look at the Terrapin commercial just so you can get a better idea of those VTOLs and how they're supposed to animate. Because they do it, you see it briefly in the Valkyrie commercial, but I think the Terrapin does it in a cooler way. Anvil Terrapin. This is it. So you saw how they were moving around back and forth in order to maintain a hover. They're moving in opposite directions. They're vectoring outward and moving around. That's what the IFCS, the Intelligent Flight Control System, alongside the blend space tech is meant to do. It is to say, okay, I want it to do this, and it will move the thrusters in the way that is most optimal to do that. And to me, not only do I love my Valkyrie, and I'm super excited to be a dropship pilot and to do the KISS maneuver, but instead of with another ship with the Legionnaire, I want to be able to essentially do that with a landing zone, rapidly approach and then stick that landing hard, minimizing the time where I'm a target, but also having the armor to get you there, and having the G-force mitigation to make it so me and the troops don't black out. But seeing the Anvil Terrapin do that, and then hearing about how people were like, oh, the Terrapin has so much wasted space. It's not a good the Terrapin. What do they call the medical Terrapin? I forget now. Anyway, seeing how people called it, oh, it's wasted space and everything like that. Yeah. And the Terrapin's strength is not in the bed that it brings. The Terrapin's strength is that it has those VTOLs that are meant to rotate and maneuver, and allow it to maneuver like that. Plus having the armor, because it's Anvil and the Terrapin has always been a heavily armored ship. So you can imagine the combat search and rescue ability of a ship that can A, hold a hover, B, rapidly come to a hover above a wounded person or something like that while taking the fire because it's heavily armored. Like the Medipin, the medical Terrapin, is going to be a beast of a CSAR ship because of the flight characteristics from its VTOLs with this upcoming tech and the armor. So these things don't just like all of this applies to dropships, but some of these things also apply to other ships with VTOLs that will really allow for them to come into their own, similarly to how dropships will be able to in the near future. But that is all that I have for this Spectrum Pulse. I hope that you guys have found it interesting and informative. As always, these will be posted up on my YouTube in the coming days, and in the description below will be the link to the show notes, so you can see all these sources for yourself, verify them, share them with friends. So let's go ahead and we'll switch screens, because I got to get ready to call it a night. So just to reiterate for everybody, if you came into the show later, and for those of you who did, I appreciate you dropping by and coming and hanging out. Good to see you, Dibley and Danger Hobo. Sorry, I've been a bit of a ghost. The reason it's just me tonight is because it's probably going to be just me for the foreseeable future. Naz has been in his plans of some pretty big life changes have been in the works for a while. Getting ready to move out, getting ready to move out of state, new job and all that. And it sounds like that's coming to a head. He's been very busy with getting ready for all those things. And so making time for Pathfinders just has not been in the cards for him. It's been barely in the cards for me, but it's made it impossible for us to get our schedules together. And so I just decided to say, you know what? I fully support you, buddy. I wish you I wish him the best. I'm hoping that, if things ever settle down for him and he wants to continue to do the show, I hope he will, consider, coming and hanging out, even if it's, just as a guest host. But for now, I'm going to continue Pathfinders solo. And I will, probably put it to the community, whether I bring on the occasional guest hosts or start a rotation or find a new co-host, or whether I just continue to go it on my own. I will be reading the long ones and the short ones. So yeah, the mouth is a little dry this evening with the monthly reports and the roadmap roundups and a pretty extensive Spectrum Pulse. But this is something I enjoy. I enjoy hanging out with you guys. You guys saw all the tabs I have. I enjoy looking up the information regarding these topics, and putting it away, putting it together and sharing with you guys in a way that makes sense. Like I said at the beginning of the Spectrum Pulse, I'm going to turn that into a video. I hope to be able to summarize it and get a bunch of good B-roll and stuff, so that way I can convey that information in about 12 to 15 minutes, kind of like I did for the next week capital ship video. I'm going on vacation on Tuesday for a week and some change. But then in July, I'm going to be able to do pretty regular episodes. And one of the things I'm gonna start doing, hopefully do a few of them, but I want to do a scanner anomaly, concepting different mission types. And so if you remember the search and rescue missions, as well as personnel transport missions and a few others, were on the progress tracker and never, the work was done and they never made it into the game. And so I want to sort of concept what those would be like with some clips and some B-roll and some images, in order to portray what I think those missions might end up being like for us in game once they eventually make it into game. Maybe portray some ideas that might make it back to CIG. Who knows? But I think it's a fun little thing I wanted to talk about. And so the first one I want to do is the rescue missions, and talk about what I think those could look like as part of a scanner anomaly. So that's all I have for this evening. Obviously, we need to close it out by sending the love to someone else. So let's go ahead and find someone to raid. If you guys have any suggestions, I'm all for it. Let's see. Anyone I know, anyone I'm following? Oh, here we go. We are going to raid Nomadic Aviator. So Nomadic Aviator is actually a Black Hawk pilot. He's an instructor down at, now it's Fort Rucker again. But I've raided him a few times. He and I have talked. Yeah, super good dude. He's, I think, prior Army infantry who put in a packet, or maybe he's a park crew chief, to be a pilot. So he flies the same aircraft that I ride in the back of, and he's got a really cool sim pit and everything. So I hope that when I go down to Fort Rucker in September, he and I will be able to meet up and grab a beer. But let's go ahead and send Nomadic Aviator a raid. All right, cheers, goodbye.